Bienvenidos a un Slugcast de Spider-Man. There's your Spanish.
God.
There's your Spanish intro that you wanted.
Hell yeah!
Good day, sluts. Welcome. Another
good afternoon.
Oh, fuck off. Welcome to another Slugcast. This time, we got the return of fucking Gene.
My God, it's been forever.
It's been since The Last of Us Part 2, buddy.
It's been like 2 years already. Or 1 year.
It's been a full year, but yeah, if May passed, then it would have been officially 2 years since you've appeared in a Slugcast.
Been forever, but I'm back, you sluts.
Let's get this over with. Let's not beat around the bush. You'll see my profile picture on Discord. We're talking about Spider-Man. Yeah. I know. It's a month late.
That's
Who cares?
The wrong one, slut.
But this is the Puerto Rican Spider-Man.
Yeah, which we both are.
Hell yeah. Sagittarius Brothers / Puerto Rican Brothers. Alright.
Alrighty, let's get going, sluts. We're talking about Spider-Man No Way Home, and here are our thoughts.
Yep.
This was awesome.
This is the most hyped shit ever, and it fucking delivered. I loved it. I really loved it. I saw the movie 3 times and loved it every time I saw it. And honestly, just thinking about it now, I want to watch it again.
But
so, if anybody wants to watch it with me this weekend, I'll be available.
Funny story, actually. We were originally planning to make this Slugcast on Wednesday. Today, right now, is Saturday.
Yeah.
And we're originally planning to make this Slugcast on Wednesday, and on Wednesday, I was with my girlfriend, and I was watching... my partner. I was with my partner.
Oh.
I love her to death. And we were watching Spider-Man No Way Home again. I saw it for the 3rd time.
Wow.
To actually be acquainted with the movie again so I could review it extensively right here with this slut.
Alright, cool. You done your homework. Yeah, I saw the movie 3 times and it's like super clear into my head. I even seen like a couple clips on YouTube just to hype up the mood a little bit. I look up that Peter versus Doc Ock fights a little sometimes. but yeah. So general thoughts, we really enjoyed
this movie, I loved it, but it's not devoid of criticism, but we'll get to that later on.
Of course, yeah. General consensus, we both really enjoyed it. We both loved it. It packed an emotional roller coaster of a punch, but yes, there are criticisms, but we'll get to it. We're just gonna really just talk about the movie overall, from how it was structured and the character moments here and there. So let's begin with the opening. I really enjoyed the opening. I think my biggest problem with it, I guess something that I've come to accept, but I guess even thinking about it might be my first tiny nitpick problem with it, is that it's paced really quickly. It's you don't get enough time to breathe, to understand, to at least, to be fair, I think it did its job just fine. But it does go by really fucking quick. Just having Peter Parker living the life that everybody knew that he's Spider-Man, it's structurally really, it's fine, you get the memo, but it did go by pretty quickly. But I don't know, I thought the opening was handled well. I just wish it could have slowed down a little bit, but yeah, it did its job. But I don't know, I don't know if I'm the only one in this opinion.
I feel like it's normal. I feel like it's just another Marvel opening to a really big... I feel like... I don't know about you, but I personally feel like this movie is as big as the Avengers.
Yeah,
personally,
I 100% agree. Arguably bigger, but yeah.
And this is how they should have opened the movie in a much more serious tone. I feel like this movie is really good in terms of in terms of pacing, in my opinion, in terms of pacing, structure, I feel like it's one of the best Spider-Man movies that has ever come out. But it's not better than other Spider-Man movies that have come out earlier, or much rather, like, I would say, like, 4 years ago. Like, I still think that Into the Spider-Verse is still,
Yeah,
like, probably, like, the
I
best Spider-Man movie that has ever come out
yeah, same here.
forever. And I still feel like Spider-Man 2 is still a much better movie in terms of pacing, structure, and payoff. This movie, I really love uh, the opening sequence, but I still feel like it doesn't take his identity as serious as other iterations of Spider-Man.
Yeah, like I feel like that happened because the movie started immediately after Far From Home. So it's like,
Because
yeah,
I feel like they should have treated this in a much more serious manner. I get it. It's a Disney movie. It needs its jokes, but at the same time, that's what I have a lot of problems with, especially Marvel's movies that have come out this in Phase 4.
yeah,
I don't feel like there have been any movies that have been quite exciting to me other than this one and Shang-Chi.
yeah. Those are the two best
So
things that's came out of Phase Four. I've really like a
so
quick
I would
thoughts. Yeah, I was gonna say quick thoughts on like my on the movies on Phase Four. I did not like Black Widow. I hated Eternals. I think Eternals is my least favorite MCU movie, and I really enjoyed Shang Chi. And the Disney Plus shows are just fine. That's just my quick rundown of how I felt about them.
I mean, Phase 4 hasn't really been like that big, to be honest. I feel like it's been the least
Interesting.
exciting, at least interesting Marvel thing that
Yeah,
they have ever done in like since forever. I feel like Phase 2 has still had some exciting points, like
Winter
Captain
Soldier.
America Civil War, Captain America Civil War.
Civil War is Phase Three.
Oh yeah. Ant-Man, Avengers 2, which I personally didn't like that much.
Yeah, me neither.
And at least they had Guardians of the Galaxy
Yeah,
as
Guardians of the
well.
Galaxy and Winter Soldier. I'd say were the best things from Phase Two. But Phase
And
Four,
I
yeah,
and I feel like the Disney Plus shows have been pretty solid. They've been pretty solid in my opinion, but they still don't feel as the level that Marvel was before. I feel like it's really good in terms of world building and in terms of having new stories to tell and really experiment where Marvel hasn't been before.
I don't know if I agree
And
with
it,
the world building in like a show like Loki. Loki and Eternals, I really wasn't a big fan of the world building in that.
I really like Loki in where in terms of Loki's performance. I feel like this is the best where we've seen Loki.
I'm inclined to agree, but my biggest problem with Loki in that case was the fact that he was like brought from 2012 Avengers, from like the 2012 era, and he's kind of a goofball, like Thor Ragnarok level goofball, and I feel like it's kind of a stretch in character personality when he's like super serious in the first Avengers, and then he's like, I don't know, like they played him up as a bit of a humorous character in that show.
But back on topic with Spider-Man, the
But yeah,
opening sequence is fine in my opinion. Like
yeah,
at the same time, this is not what I'm here for this movie in particular. You know,
of course.
I feel like they handled it well. I feel like it was a pretty like meh opening sequence because at the same time it doesn't really show that much consequence to his identity, and at the same time it's like it was scrapped so quickly.
I would say it does show the consequences. But I was gonna say I agree with the last bit. Like it was just skimmed through very quickly because you start seeing that they go to no, they start being interrogated by the police. They hire fucking Daredevil to be the Peter's lawyer to not get sued. And it's like, so like it does have consequences, but it's just skimmed over properly. I heard there was apparently a court scene where we actually were introduced to Daredevil a little bit earlier, like in the mid, like in a court, but they scrapped that scene. So I figured like that would have been an interest. I mean, like I think that would have like fucked the pacing a little bit because I can see why it may not be that necessary, but I can see like, but it does feel like they wanted to like get that shit over with just so we can get to the multiverse stuff, which is fine and all. But it's like again, like I feel like I needed more time to understand like the big consequences of Peter's life, which I feel like we do, but at the same time, it goes by really quick. It doesn't feel like a 2.5 hour movie.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a 2.5 hour movie for sure. And at the same time, I would have liked it to be like 3 hours. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I want it to be longer for a different reason. I feel like we agree on I feel like we both might have the same reason for why we want it to be longer, but we'll get to that when we get to that.
For sure.
But yeah, like I like the opening. Like, not saying, of course, and some of the humor worked for me, like fucking Happy and Aunt May just, being stupid.
I mean, I feel like some of the humor was it at the same time it's subjective.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's why I say like I like that. Like I was fine with some of the humor here and there, but I
don't really like it that some of the scenes are dependent on if you laugh or not. That's what I don't like.
No, that's fair. But
like, for example, like when there's this particular scene, and in fact, like almost every Ned scene in this movie is dependent on do you laugh or not.
Yeah, there's definitely some Ned scenes where it's like there's that awkward pause, and I can see it like working if people find it funny in the movie theater, but when it comes out like on DVD, it's gonna feel awkward.
Like I really like the first viewing, but once I got to my second viewing, a third viewing, I was really like, man, like they really need to stop with the Ned stuff, because in the first movie they have him be the guy in the chair, which he was fine in that movie. I didn't have any problem with Ned. But then in the second movie where they have this whole entire subplot with him and Betty Brant, it was just annoying, and it was like at the same time like unnecessary, because at the end the payoff isn't really that
they just break up at the end.
That good. Like they just break up in the end, and this relationship was just there for comedic purpose. And
yeah,
I don't like that, because I feel like if you make a character comedic or not, they should still have an arc. And it just feels like in all of these movies, Ned doesn't even have an arc. There's nothing good or bad that he does.
He's just the guy in the chair.
Jokes. Exactly. He's just the guy in the chair, and he never becomes the guy out of the chair. Like, sure, at the end you could say for some reason that he's not the guy in the chair anymore, but at the same time, even with the consequences of the ending, he's still gonna end up the guy in the chair, because at the end of the day, we all know this is a Marvel movie, and everything turns out the way Peter wants it to end.
Yeah. But going a little further with the opening, you got the scene where Peter's applying to college, and he and his friends get rejected by every single college, including MIT, which is like their, the one where they were like rooting for the most. Peter feels like shit because they didn't really essentially do anything wrong. It's the fact that they knew that they were friends and close with Peter Parker, and who is Spider-Man, who is accused of killing Mysterio in the ending of Far From Home, that, their involvement with him, that ruins their lives. It ruins the lives of Aunt May, and it ruins the lives of Happy. So what happens is that Peter goes straight to fucking Doctor Strange to attempt to wipe everybody's memories. At least it tried to, and then Peter just Peters out of this, and makes the consequences worse, because, as he's about to erase the entire world's memory, as Peter's like, wait, but what about MJ? What about Ned? What about Aunt May? And then everything went horribly wrong. What do you think of that scene? I feel like, I think we can both agree that it was kind of dumb, but it's kind of in character Peter, or at least Tom Holland's Peter. Like, to be a little bit of a
I feel I didn't like that scene very much, not because of all of these names that he's putting for Doctor Strange to change. I feel like the scene is dumb in my opinion. I don't necessarily think it's stupid, but I feel like the scene is dumb because it's something that could have completely been avoided, and I feel like this is their direction, the direction that they're going for this Peter, because in every movie, and literally in almost every Spider-Man Homecoming, in Far From Home, and in No Way Home, there's this action that Peter takes that is the completely different that is completely opposite to what he should do. And we as an audience know that.
yeah, it's like
But he does it
consistent.
anyway.
Yeah.
For example, in Far From Home was with the glasses, the scene with the glasses thing and Mysterio, that he gives the glasses away to Mysterio. I feel like that's the worst scene in Far From Home, in my opinion.
I
And I
didn't
feel
mind
like
it.
this is the and I feel like this is the worst scene in No Way Home, in my opinion. Because at the same time, this could all be avoided.
Yeah.
This could all be avoided. And I get it. This is the direction that they're going for this, Peter. But at the same time, I don't like the way that Doctor Strange just forgives him because, oh, he's just a kid. No, he's not just a kid. You fought with him in Avengers Infinity War against Thanos. You know how he operates. You know him as a person. You know him enough to say that he's not a kid. Because the only reason why you would say he's just a kid is to protect him. Doctor Strange doesn't want to protect Peter. He's just doing this as a favor.
Yeah. Yeah, he's doing it
And
as
I
a favor because
just
like they use that spell
feel
for like way dumber things, like for like dumber things.
I just feel like he just said that as an excuse. Like the writers just wrote that in as an excuse to just keep the plot moving forward. You know?
I don't know about that. Like I feel like Doctor Strange like could genuinely like felt the fact that Peter is still pretty young and kind of naive. Like sometimes he forgets that he's still just a high school student who's still trying to figure out what the fuck he wants to do with his life. And it's like, you know, he feels bad, but it's like, you know, and he tries to help, but it's like when everything went wrong, it's like, listen, like the problem isn't, you know, the fact that you're trying to, the fact that everybody knows you're you're Spider-Man, you know, it's the fact that, you know, you expect to live both lives and expect everything to work out, you know, like it's like a nice little message that it's like, you know,
But for me in particular, it's annoying that even after everything, after fighting Thanos, after losing Tony, after giving everything away, Tony's literal $1 billion drones and funds to Mysterio, giving that away, it's just annoying that after all of that,
he still
he
makes
doesn't
he's
learn
still,
from those
yeah,
mistakes.
he's still pretty naive.
He's still naive after all of that, after literally a world ending event. He still hasn't changed. And that's what I don't like about this Peter, because after everything that has happened, he doesn't change. He feels remorse for what he's done, but that doesn't change the fact that he's doing the exact same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah, that's fair. That's pretty fair. I think like for me, like I just accepted it because I know this is like their way of bringing back like, you know, the characters that we'll eventually be seeing. Um, but yeah, no, I get it. Like on one end, like I understand like why he felt the need to do it because, you know, it's like he's run out of options and, you know, he's like second guessing himself. I don't know. Like I at least I find it consistent, which is why it didn't bother me so much. But I do admit that it's like it is like a big problem, the fact that this scene is what caused everything that would eventually happen. And it's like it's one thing for it to be like Peter's fault in its entirety, but this like took it to a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree with the fact that he doesn't even seem to like get improve. But I at least like I'm fine with it in terms of consistency. Like I again like the character should definitely be growing and definitely be learning some lessons. But he still seems to make really dumb mistakes, which I don't know if I don't know. For me, I was like fine with it because of its consistency and the fact that it's like it's like I don't think Doctor Strange is really wrong in the sense that he's still I don't know. Like I
But
could still
it's also like a complete. I also see this like this is also a complete other different topic between like why I don't like this Spider-Man this much. And again, like I
yeah, Tom
see
Holland's
this
your least
movie
favorite.
I see this movie as a conclusion to Peter's arc and the beginning of something new. I
Yeah,
feel like these three movies are what the catalyst to him being Spider-Man, to him finally becoming Spider-Man. Because when you think about it, he's a complete contrast to Tony in all of these three movies because as he doesn't learn from his mistakes, or he does, he feels remorse and he feels bad for everything that he's
I
done.
feel like he does, but he just
But
makes another mistake.
he just makes the same mistakes that he has always been doing, even from like in the past in Homecoming. Whereas it's a complete contrast to Tony, where he makes a mistake in Iron Man, he completely fixes it in Iron Man 2 and doesn't make it again. And then he makes another mistake in Iron Man 2. Like, for
Yeah, he
example, in
makes
Iron
it.
Man
Yeah,
1,
he yeah.
where he makes thrusters, but the thrusters can't reach space. In Iron Man 2, he reaches space. But then
But then in Iron Man 2, he like makes a statement that no one else can make another Iron Man suit like he can, and then fucking
and
Killmonger
then
comes in.
and then in Iron Man 3, he makes all of these suits, and it's like Tony makes all this new tech because he learns from his mistakes. Spider-Man learns from his mistakes, but it's a complete contrast from Tony. Whereas Tony learns from his mistakes and makes new tech to answer for those mistakes. Spider-Man, Tom Holland Spider-Man, makes the same mistakes in all of these three movies for the sake of a joke. For example, when he gives Tony's glasses away, all of the whole entire movie could have been avoided. The
Yeah.
whole entire plot between Mysterio and him could have been avoided. You see, like all of these things could have been avoided if Peter learned. And the way that Doctor Strange says, "Oh, you're just a kid," it feels like everything that he's done can be forgiven because he's naive,
No,
because he's
I
just
don't
a
know. I
kid.
don't know if it's not. I don't know if it's the fact that it's just the fact that he's forgiving him. I just think that it's like is sometimes even after every like I think even he seems to understand that it's like he even forgets the fact that Peter's still pretty young and naive because it's like he remembers all the stuff that he went through and the fact that he's doing a spell to wipe out the memories of everybody that knows he's Spider-Man because he's trying to get into college and live a normal life while simultaneously being a superhero. It's like he understands him, but it doesn't really forgive him. I mean, Doctor Strange gets pissed off even more when he found out that he didn't even think about reaching out to this college to give his friends a second chance. It's like
Exactly.
I don't think he excuses it though. I just think it's like he tries to be mellowed out by it, but then gets frustrated even more.
And this movie is the answer to all of that because he finally learns at the end of the movie. He even says that everybody is going to forget who Peter Parker is. Like, here I'm spoiling the movie, but at the same time, like, we're going to spoil the movie
Oh yeah,
later on. But
full on fucking spoilers. I feel like it'd be obvious by now, and I think how long this movie's been out already, like a month or so. Yeah, spoilers are already everywhere.
this is why I say that I see all of these three movies as him finally becoming Spider-Man because you see a complete difference in what he's in what he wants. You know, at the start of the movie, he asks Doctor Strange to make a spell in a completely selfish manner for himself and for his friends.
I would say it's more selfless because he was more thinking about his friends than himself at the time. It's more so selfish
He
in the sense
was,
it was
he
more so
was,
selfish to try and like,
but at
thinking
the
that
same
he yeah.
time, but at the same time, Mary Jane even says, you know, they know it's not his fault because they know he didn't do anything wrong. Like that's also a character trait of Peter that he can't catch a break, and I like that. I like that, but it still annoys me. I'm not saying that it's completely bad for the movie, but I still say that it's still annoying to me that that he still doesn't learn from Far From Home to this new movie.
Oh, but
You know,
it's mostly Far From Home. You're mostly referencing, like, it's not Homecoming you have an issue with.
like Homecoming is where he starts, and he still has Tony. You
Yeah,
know, so in reality, nothing really changes. He's still Spider-Man, but he learns. At least in Homecoming, he learns that all of his actions have consequences. In Civil War is his first introduction, and we don't really know anything about Tom Holland at that point. But now we have Homecoming, and at least in that movie, he had an arc. In Far From Home, he has an arc as well, but I feel like he makes more mistakes in Far From Home than he does in Homecoming. You know what I mean?
yeah, but I feel like that one I can sort of excuse it because this time he is by himself, kind of.
And in this one, he makes the mistake because at the same time, Doctor Strange says he didn't even plead his case for the university to accept him, even though
Yeah,
they weren't going to. He still had that option.
yeah.
And at the same time, that was done for only a joke because
It
that's the
it
payoff for that scene.
Yeah, it was
It's a
definitely
joke.
played. That would say that one in particular was played as a joke, but it's also like it's also like plays into like how naive Tom Holland's Peter can be because it's like he didn't even think about that point. So it's like, yeah,
Like, even though he has good intentions to get his friends into college,
he still like fucks up.
he still fucks up. He still makes a mistake. And the thing is, by the end is when he learns that this is finally a movie where Spider-Man learns from his mistake and then takes everything. All the cards are stacked against him, and he ends up not getting his way. You could argue that in Far From Home he doesn't get his way because his identity gets fucked and everybody knows that he's Spider-Man. But at least he fixes that, you know? By
Yeah,
the end, he fixes that. And not even by the end, like through the midway of the movie, everybody forgets he's Spider-Man. I mean, no, not really. No.
no.
No, that's a mistake from my part.
No, that's
That's a
definitely the
mistake from
ending.
my
I
part.
thought we were talking about Far
People
From Home for some reason.
people still know that he's Spider-Man in this movie, but
It's just not a
by
focus.
the end he fixes that. By the end he fixes that. But in my opinion, where I feel like this movie could have done more with that identity thing other than just the beginning portion.
That was another thing. Like, that's one of the things that I was that before, the trailers were announced. I think I was excited for this movie because I was curious to see where they were going to take Tom Holland's Peter now, with everybody knowing that he was Spider-Man. I was looking forward to that, and I was,
But
kind of bummed out that it was just
by
like a
the
short
by
portion.
the end, I wasn't necessarily bummed. I was just like, whatever, it flowed naturally because what this movie does well. It's that still everything flows naturally. Like nothing feels forced. Like the whole plot between him and his identity, it doesn't feel forced out like with other
Yeah.
things. Like, I still liked that it flowed naturally, and that this movie took everything and it still has good pacing, good structure, and it's not like the shit that Witcher Season 2 did.
Oh God. So really, like, the big problem you have with the opening was just mostly how Tom Holland just doesn't seem to grow up until, like, seemingly the ending of this movie, of this, like, of the trilogy. You know, he doesn't seem to, like, try to
Yeah,
be
like,
less naive.
yeah,
Yeah.
basically.
I guess for me, like, the reason why it didn't bother me, and I know it probably sounds like a broken record, because, like, I guess because he is naive, like, and the fact that it's sort of a character trait, like, yes, he could definitely learn from it, but that is still, like, a personality trait, so it's like he's still bound to make some dumb decisions. And, you know, yeah, this could have been a hell of avoided. I'm pretty sure he could have just kept MJ to still be the only person to know that he was Spider-Man, and then just tell Ned and Aunt May that he is Spider-Man, and boom. But, you know, he's still super sensitive. He's still, you know, very unsure with everything, and he still makes really dumb decisions. But, I don't know, I guess it didn't bother me because I like that it was still consistent, and it's just something that I can buy into. If it was something that he wouldn't do, I think I would have a bigger issue with that. You know, like if it was something completely out of character, I think that would have had a bigger issue. However, I do understand the point of he doesn't seem to develop as a character because he still maintains that personality traits. But having a character flaw is probably another thing I can also, you know, I'm fine with as well. But, you know,
Yeah, like, it doesn't. Yeah, like, that's where this movie succeeds. Like, everything that Tom Holland does,
it's consistent
from Homecoming to Spider-Man,
to No
like,
Way Home.
from Homecoming to No Way Home, it doesn't feel out of place.
Yeah,
That's what I commend it for.
yeah,
You
because
know?
even if
Though
I might
it's
agree that
not
it's
my favorite,
yeah.
I would still say that it's consistent to his Spider-Man, and by the end, they do fix this Spider-Man.
I definitely would say that it might be still my. I think I might agree that it might be my least favorite scene in the whole film too. I mean, this is me just trying to think if I can think of another scene that I did not like, but I think I really can't think of one right now. But maybe there might be one that may have bugged me. But yeah, but I didn't really seem to bug me that much because of the consistency. But yeah, but moving forward to the opening sequence, obviously you felt like the spell fucks up. And you know, it seemingly got contained, but when Peter Parker actually went to that bridge, we see a familiar face, and I think it's finally time we talk about the villains.
Mm-hmm.
Starting with Dr. Octavius.
Man, they all stole the show. For real.
They were the best. They were one of the best. They were one of. I have an opinion who's the.
For me personally, they were the best part of the entire movie. For example, Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin, for me in particular, stole
Green Goblin was great.
Show.
Green Goblin was great.
Stole the show. Stole the show. This is where I have to say that for an actor, the actor has to really steal the show in terms of a movie, even if the movie isn't theirs, because this is Tom Holland's Spider-Man, you know, but this felt like every scene that Willem Dafoe was in, it was like, my eyes are on him. My eyes are on that guy. Your eyes are on Willem Dafoe because he's unpredictable. You don't know what he's gonna do. And when he does what he's going to do, it feels breathtaking.
Yep.
It feels like a holy shit moment. Everything that he does, it feels like a holy shit moment. And that's what I love about this Green Goblin.
Yeah, Green Goblin definitely, like, Willem Dafoe played the living fuck out of Green Goblin in this one in particular. I think this honestly might be I personally think this is his best performance of the Spider-Man films.
For
In
sure,
conjunction
for
to the
sure.
first one, like this one, he felt very sinister and very evil when he was like being influenced by Green Goblin, and it's like, yeah, again, he's so unpredictable. And what I love about Willem Dafoe is that he even stated that he wasn't going to come back unless he did his own stunts. The fact that everything that he did was his stunts, and the man is like in his 60s, like, for fuck's sake, that's dedication.
Yeah, like that's dedication to a character, and I love Willem Dafoe's performance. I love him as a person. Like every scene that he's in this movie, it's just holy shit.
Even when he wasn't being influenced by the Goblin, like his performance, like this is gonna lead to my point. But I really love the arc that they gave to these characters in the sense that the whole point is to try and like cure them as opposed to like leaving them to their fates. And like when I see characters like Willem Dafoe and Doc Ock, for instance, as Doc Ock in particular, when they actually freed him from from losing his mind from his tentacle shits, when they actually fixed his microchip, it was like the most wholesome scene in the entire film for me, because it's like, wow, most of these villains die at the end of their movies, and it's like we didn't even think about the fact that they were just scientists at the end. Like they were not terrible people when they started. They were just corrupted or influenced by some negative shit that happened to them, and then they tragically died, or at least 3 out of the 5 of them tragically died. And it's like, getting them a second chance, it's actually a really good arc that I was genuinely really happy towards. Seeing Doc Ock actually regaining his humanity, and him saying that he just stopped hearing the voices, and how he forgot what's it like to feel to not hear those voices. It got me, because it's like, wow, they redeemed Doc Ock without having to kill him off. And when I see Willem Dafoe, when I see Green Goblin, when I see Willem Dafoe, when I see Norman Osborn, like, still being Norman Osborn, not being influenced by the Goblin, you can see that there is still good in him. It's just that there's something much more evil, like, lurking behind him. And I don't know, like, the villains in particular were just such a joy to go through, and just seeing them actually get cured as opposed to, like, leaving them to their fate to die. Not only did I really enjoy, but I also like the fact that Peter's selflessness was willing to go out of his way to help them, despite any of the consequences. Despite no good deed goes without any consequences. I really like that.
Me too.
What do you think of? Now, I want to talk about the 2 elephants in the room, but what do you think of Sandman and Lizard?
Look, I feel like Sandman and Lizard were just there.
Yeah.
They didn't really do anything. Like, they didn't have any motivation to be there. They didn't do anything. They just fought Spider-Man, and that's it. And once their fight was over, it's like they just left the movie entirely. It was
I,
just like,
I did like the
bye.
opening with Sandman, in the sense that he's because of the event of Spider-Man 3. Like, we know he's not really a terrible, like, he's not Peter's enemy. So I like that he helps him in the beginning.
I personally did not like it.
Really?
I liked that they helped each other, but the payoff was poor. It was just they imprison Electro with Sandman helping him, and because of what happened to Electro, then he turns on Spider-Man, and it's like, oh, I don't trust anybody. And then for the entire movie, he just says, I don't trust anyone. I
Yeah.
don't trust anyone. And it's like, you helped him, and the only reason why you turn on him is...
Because he thought you killed him.
Exactly. And it's like... my point of view is, if they're gonna introduce the character this way and then have the payoff be extremely poor, don't do it at all.
Yeah. I mean, like, the thing, I mean, like, at least for me, like, I could see, I didn't really see Sandman much as a villain in this one compared to the other 4 guys. because like he didn't seem like he was trying to kill Spider-Man at all. He just wanted the box so he could return back to his hometown, so he could go back to his daughter, whether he gets cured or not. You know, so it's like I like that it's still consistent that he doesn't really help the villains per se. He just like he helps them, but he still has his own motivations compared to the other one else. Everyone else just wants to destroy the box and stay here, so that way they don't have to In the
Like
case for Electro,
for me personally, he was just there for consistency's sake.
yeah, like he was digitally there. Like he wasn't like he voiced the character, but
Like
he wasn't.
the actor didn't really do anything. Like,
Yeah,
it
the
was all
actor.
just CGI. He
Yeah,
just
the actor wasn't actually there. I think it's because he looks a lot older than, which I don't understand. I don't know if it's because he looked older, because I don't understand why that would be an issue, because this is like after Spider-Man 3, and it's been many years since Spider-Man 3, much like how we see an older Toby. Oh, oops, spoilers, but yeah. Much like how we see an older Toby, we should see an older Sandman, you know? Like, I kind of, it doesn't have to feel like Spider-Man 3 just ended, you know?
That's also a problem that I have with the movie, is that they explain why the characters are there, but there are other characters that don't explain why they're there, or from
Well,
from which
I,
point they were
I was gonna
taken
say,
from
I was gonna
to
say,
enter the universe.
I think my biggest point was from the when as for the why, because we all know why they were there, you know? Because like they were there because they all knew.
Well,
Yeah, I think I know the next.
here's the problem. Here's the problem. They explain that the reason why they're there is because they know who Peter Parker is, Spider-Man. But there's a complete character that doesn't know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and
Electro.
that's Electro.
Yeah.
Electro shouldn't be there because he doesn't know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and they don't
Even
explain that.
I think the most that I got was that Gwen Stacy yelled Peter's name to Electro. That's the only thing, but that doesn't necessarily equal to Electro knows who Peter Parker is.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that there's like 1,000 Peters, so it doesn't mean like Peter Parker. That would be like so uninteresting, in my opinion.
Yeah, it makes me wonder. Like, what I think they just use that as a bullshit excuse, like just to bring all those the closest thing to the Sinister Six. But they know they can't not include Electro. So it's like they had this this reason, but they had to like throw in a little plot hole just to get him there.
And at the same time, it's like there's no Tom Holland villain there.
Yeah, you know what? Vulture should have been in the movie.
That's what I mean. Like, there's no Tom Holland villain there. Like, all of the villains there are either Toby's villains or Andrew's villains.
Yeah.
There's no Tom Holland villain there. You could argue that Green Goblin turns into a Tom Holland villain once he kills Aunt May. Big spoiler alert, Aunt May dies. But he's not a Tom villain. He's a Toby villain.
And speaking of which, apparently, I saw this in a post. I don't know if this is actually real or not, but apparently, the writers originally included Venom, like I think Tom Hardy Venom for the final battle, but then they scrapped him out.
I wouldn't like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't like that either. But it's like,
at the same time, it makes the movie better because Venom wasn't there. So, but let's get back on topic.
But
they don't explain why Electro's there. They do explain why Lizard is there. They explain why Sandman is there.
Everybody but Electro is like clear.
Everybody but Electro.
With Electro,
at the same time, they don't really explain when these characters were brought from here.
Well, I think Green Goblin, Doc Ock, and Lizards are self-explanatory. Oh, and it's just Sandman that's like the weirdest one.
Yeah, like they say that they bring those characters right before they died, and then all of the other characters know that. Like, for example, Green Goblin dies, and then Doc Ock says, "Oh, you died, so it doesn't make sense why you're here." And I think that has some time travel Marvel thing to do with, where they
Mhm.
explain in Loki. But here's the thing: if you didn't watch Loki, I feel like if you didn't watch Loki, then you wouldn't understand like the TVA and time travel stuff that they
Yeah.
explain in Marvel. Because Avengers Endgame did a poor job in explaining the future, the time travel stuff. Loki did a better job in explaining the time travel stuff, but it added more questions than answers. And this movie, I still have questions to when was Doc Ock taken from, and
Well,
when was Sandman taken from?
I,
Because
I was gonna say
you know,
Sandman is my bigger question because with Doc Ock they actually explained it. They actually explained that he had. It was like immediately. It was like during the scene when Doc Ock was like strangling Peter. So basically before he sacrificed himself. So with Doc Ock, like I don't have an issue
yeah,
with.
but then Toby would remember, oh, he escaped from a portal, and then Toby would say something
But
like,
Toby was after 3. Toby was much after 3.
exactly, but they would explain, like those Spider-Men would explain, well, like I just would have liked a scene where they explain, like, you know, where Toby says something like, I think I recall before him dying, he kind of went through a portal, but I just didn't do anything about it. I would have liked an explanation like that. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't know if I like. I hear you, but it's like I don't. Then he's gonna need to do that with like all the other 3 villains. I don't know. I think it's just a time skipping. I think it's just a time thing and like multiverse stuff. Like I don't necessarily think that the Toby that fought Doc Ock before he got teleported is the same Toby. I think it's just a different one. It's just that for us, like as an audience, like we obviously know that these are Toby villains. But from the multiverse and time stuff, like I think we already know more or less like where exactly they come from. But that doesn't inherently mean that the Toby and Andrew that we have here is the same Toby and Andrew from the universe that they came from. You know, it's a little confusing to like explain it, but I
Well,
don't think it really, but I don't
they
think it's a
they
really bitch.
are like
They are, but
they
they
are.
aren't. They are, but they aren't. They are from the same universe, but from a different time point, or they are from a different universe. I don't know. Like it's okay. What I'm saying is that like it seems that the Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield that we know definitely came from the movies. Meanwhile, the villains, while they do take place in the same universe, were just from a different time zone. So they don't technically appear in the same with our current Toby and Andrew. Our current Toby and Andrew, they already lost their Doc Ocks and their Green Goblins and Electros. Like they're already dead in their time
But
universe. But
they're
they came
already
from
the same. That's the thing.
yeah. It's a little confusing to
That's
explain, but I think
that's
that's
why I say. That's why I say Marvel
yeah.
is doing a poor job of explaining the why of time travel and the when of time travel. You know,
I agree, but like to me, even though it sounds confusing, I don't know. Like to me, it made more
it
sense. It made
still
sense.
doesn't,
Yeah,
like, to
I don't think it's
me.
like great,
It
but it's like I
still isn't like that big of a deal.
yeah, it's not a big deal, but it's like I don't know. I guess in this case, it was more self-explanatory to me than say Endgame, for instance. Because with Endgame, like they had something consistent, and then they just chose not to be consistent by the end of it. Where at least with this one, like I can understand like what's the deal? Like why are they alive? But Toby and Andrew are so much older than the last time we saw it. Like Toby and Andrew is after their movies, and then these guys were like before they died from a different time point of maybe a similar multiverse, but not exactly the same. And I don't know, like to me, because we don't know too much about the multiverse, and it's only just recently started with Loki setting this with Loki, and to some extent this movie like introducing what the multiverse concept is to the movies in this case. and we're gonna have a whole Doctor Strange sequel based around the multiverse.
Yeah.
I feel like right now we don't have all the answers, but I can only hope that we would get as many answers as possible. But at least for me, in this case, in the case of the villains showing up in this film, I understand it, as difficult it is to explain it. I get it. Like I understand where they're coming with what they're doing in this case. The only issues that I can see are when does Sandman come from? Because it's been a while since Spider-Man 3 has happened, and it'd be kind of weird to just bring him back from not too far off after Spider-Man 3. And I think it would have been interesting to see him years after. Like, what is he up to now? And then Electro, because he technically didn't even know who Peter Parker as Spider-Man. He only knew Spider-Man, and that's about it. I get it's a dumb excuse to just bring them in, and I'm fine with it. Like it really doesn't take away from the experience of the movie, but there is still those little plot holes that it's like, that they need to iron out a little bit.
There's also like this big nitpick I have. Like, it's not a criticism with the movie. It's not anything. It's just like a nitpick I have with it's like a small nitpick. In Loki, they explain time travel and the TVA and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So does that mean that Peter fucking up the multiverse was planned? Because they say that in Loki, everything that happens is like all consistent within like time and everything has to be consistent. And all of these things that aren't consistent, the TVA steps in and makes it consistent.
Like that.
That doesn't ruin the movie for me. That doesn't ruin the movie, or it's not a criticism that I have with the movie entirely, or nothing like that. It's just a nitpick, It's just a nitpick that is like, I would have liked that they do like little continuity things with Loki and like Hawkeye and like all of these other Disney Plus shows with the movie, but at the same time, it doesn't matter.
Like, at least for me, like, I wasn't really a big fan of Loki's world building as a whole, so it's like I really didn't even like that concept too much, but, yeah, like, that is an interesting point that I didn't think about. It's the fact that it's like, if Peter fucking the multiverse, happened, like, was it technically planned? Because if it weren't to be unless it conveniently happened after the events of, the Loki's female counterparts killing the, Kang the Conqueror, basically.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, the TVA still exists, and they still take variants and all that stuff, So
I mean, yeah, that's the thing. I just really hated that.
But the little Marvel fan in me would have liked them to do something with that. But at the same time, it doesn't matter. Like, if it happens, I'd be fine with it. If it doesn't happen, I don't care.
I'm kind of glad they didn't, because like I said, I just wasn't a big fan of Loki world building wise. It's also similar to how I feel towards Eternals, which I thought Eternals was worse than Loki in that sense. But I really did not like how Loki was building up the Marvel universe and the way it did. I think it's probably more consistent than Endgame in terms of the time traveling stuff. But I just really did not like how it felt like the universe, or the multiverse as a whole, was just.
In my opinion, per se, like, even if I didn't like, for example, like Eternals, I didn't watch Eternals, by the way. Like, I didn't even watch it. I wasn't bothered to either. But
yeah, it's really not worth it.
But as a franchise, continuity would be better if you still did what you already established.
Yeah.
Like, not entirely fix it, because it also has like a point of no return, like Rise of Skywalker did, where the entire movie was about fixing Last Jedi instead of owning up to it. Like, for example, Halo 5. Halo 5 did something that they almost fucked up the entire franchise, but then Halo Infinite came around and continued that, and and Halo Infinite is successful and people like it, and it's good. Whereas with this movie, I would like if they continued already established stuff that they did from the MCU with, like, from Loki, but at the same time, like, it doesn't matter if they don't, like, it
Yeah,
doesn't fuck up the movie for
it's
me.
confusing because it's like, on one end you need to keep that continuity, but at the same time you don't want to confuse the audiences by having to bring the MCU shows into the movie continuity. It's like you don't want to be too dependent that you watch everything, and it's like, you know, I
But
mean,
that, but
but granted,
at the
like
same
they're still
time,
connected, because
like, that's what Endgame did. Like,
yeah,
you had to watch everything from the MCU to understand Endgame. And then Endgame added all of these other things that if you have a movie that depends on continuity from past movies, because this is what No Way Home is. It depends on continuity from the past movies. And like I said, this entire trilogy is the building blocks to Peter becoming Spider-Man.
yeah,
So if there's something that they screw up before, that automatically turns into a plot hole. But in my point of view, it doesn't really have. If it doesn't have anything to do with Spider-Man, I don't care because it doesn't ruin my core
enjoyment.
enjoyment of the
Yeah,
movie exactly.
it's in that case, like, yeah, like I agree, and I agree with that. Like it's also a lot difficult when you have a big franchise like Marvel and it has like different creators involved when they start introducing something new. Yeah, that's part of the reason why I didn't like how Eternals and Loki handled its world building, because it's like it just kind of fucks the universe a little bit to a more needlessly complicated approach. So it's like I agree that they should probably like stick to their guts, but I feel like with the way Loki and Eternals were, how they were handled, it's like I feel like the less I think about it, the more I would probably feel better with the MCU universe. I just feel like both of them just kind of turned the world into a less interesting universe to me. That's why, but we'll see where it happens, because obviously Loki has to play, like, the events of Loki do will come into effect in one of the movies, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, because Kang the Conqueror is going to be in that movie, or yeah, the actor that played he who I don't know, he who whatever. I say
Yeah,
Kang the Conqueror because I don't remember the actual.
it's another version of Kang, like
Yeah,
He Who Remains.
he who remains. That was it. Yeah,
Holy
but
shit, did I get it right?
well, let me see. Kang the
I
Conqueror.
thought I, I thought I got it wrong.
Kang the Conqueror. He who remains. Yeah, you're right. You got it right.
Holy shit.
but yeah. But yeah. That's more or less like the basis of the villains. I enjoyed them. But yeah, there's still some rocky shit with them. But yeah. But moving on to the next topic, we have our Uncle Ben. Technically speaking, even though it's not really Uncle Ben, it's Aunt May.
Hmm.
The greatest. With great power comes great responsibility. That
I
we
have I have a lot of thoughts on this.
I feel conflicted with this, because it's like, I've always thought that Tony was Peter's Uncle Ben to some extent, but yeah, like
No, like
May,
if in the beginning it was like that, I would have not liked that.
yeah,
I think Tony is Tony. Like, he shouldn't be the catalyst for Peter. I think Uncle Ben is Uncle Ben. He should always be there. But I feel like, I'm sorry to cut you off,
no, yeah, by all
but
means,
I am also conflicted with this because it does make me sad that Aunt May dies. Like
I
it
mean,
doesn't make me.
I liked how the death was executed, and it definitely packed an emotional punch. And I did feel pretty bad about it. And I'm probably one of the few that actually enjoyed Aunt May in this movie, because I know people that really did not like this character for some reason. But like, I did feel very sad. Like, it was a good scene. I really liked it, and it definitely showed so much growth in Peter Parker. And I get why they sort of made it into the Uncle Ben situation. However, we now here's the big question: was there always been an Uncle Ben?
I
Because
feel like in this universe, there never was.
I'm inclined to believe that too, um, and I'm fine with it for the most part. But again, that's why I felt like Tony Stark played that Uncle Ben role, because like when he died, it would be like, okay, now Peter Parker has to be his own self. Like he can't depend on Iron Man anymore. He has to be like his own Peter Parker. But you know, like I thought that was like the beginning of his actual growth, but actually it was this one. And I don't have a lot of problems with the
I
scene. I like it. I like the way it was executed. But it was Aunt May that died.
I personally felt bad for Peter, and like it made me sad, and I did have a tear. I did have tears in my eyes, like when Aunt May died, but I do have to say that she wasn't really that important for this Spider-Man per se, and or maybe that's not the word I want to get across, important, but because, for example, in Homecoming, she doesn't really appear that often. And in Far From Home, she doesn't really appear that often either. In this film, like she didn't really have that much importance to us as an audience. She did to Peter because obviously she has an emotional connection to Peter, and they have to keep that continuity, obviously, because it's his aunt, and it's obviously going to make him sad. And it did make me sad, the fact that she died, because I didn't expect that. But
I think now with what you just said, I think I understand why a lot of people didn't resonate with Aunt May, not only in this trilogy, or why some people probably weren't really that affected towards her death, other than like how it was executed. But like now, I think I'm more open towards this. But like, I think I'm more okay with this being like the breaking point of Peter to actually now becoming his Spider-Man, because this was someone that was influential in his life. Even though it's unfortunate we don't see it, but we know that Peter lives with Aunt May this entire time, like with almost his well. I don't know if it's his entire life, because Peter, the whole conversation with Peter's parents is a little bit of a weird one. But at least as far as we know, like Aunt May was his legal guardian and took care of him for as long as she did. So it's like obviously she has an influence in Peter's life. We as the audiences just never got to see it because well, she wasn't a major character in the in the movies. But like compare that to like Spider-Man 1 and the Amazing Spider-Man 1. Like we only see Uncle Ben in those movies, and we know why his death is affected to Peter, but we weren't really. Well, we know Aunt May in this trilogy more than we've seen Uncle Ben in the other two trilogies, because he
yeah,
only appeared once.
and if Aunt May is the Uncle Ben in this movie, like, not that she's Uncle Ben, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I
Like
mean, like
she's
the great power comes great responsibility. Yeah,
yeah, then it does make sense the way that they did it, but I don't know. Like it's just like, for example, when they kill off Uncle Ben, he doesn't know who kills Uncle Ben, you know?
Well, wait. Which one are we talking about? Andrew or Toby?
Well, he knows that he knows that Sandman killed his uncle.
Yeah, but we initially. Well,
And
that was a retcon.
In Andrew's movie, he doesn't know who kills Uncle Ben, and I feel like that's a factor that it could have been anybody. But in this movie, it's Green Goblin who kills Aunt May.
Yeah,
And
I didn't even think
in
about
this
that.
movie, in this movie, it has a lot more impact because it's Green Goblin. But I feel like this just has to do with me personally. Not that it's bad or anything.
No, I think I see your perspective because much like the whole message of Spider-Man in the first place is that anybody could have been Spider-Man. You know, it was like
Exactly,
much
and
like how anybody could. Like I see that perspective. Like I understand it, even though like I don't really. I think it was handled well in Amazing Spider-Man 1, but I think, the way it was handled in the first Spider-Man movie, and I would say the way Aunt May's death was handled in No Way Home, I was completely fine with it. But I do understand, like, how the death of Uncle Ben could have just been anybody, really. It could have been caused by anybody because it's, like, this whole wrong place, wrong time, and, I don't know. But then again, I also like the fact that it's, the way it's handled, as in, like, Peter Parker could have stopped Uncle Ben's death. Okay, I'm a little conflicted with that one. Um,
yeah, like but
it's always
here
like his fault, you know.
here it feels like but here personally, I would have liked it if there was an Uncle Ben, because at the same time he could have died by any means. Like, let's say like he dies from a fucking car crash or something. He couldn't stop that. And it's like he was taken away from him and he couldn't do anything. And it's that sort of thing that kills him.
Yeah,
Here, he could have stopped Green Goblin by any means. Like, he could have pushed more, you know? And it's that with everything that has happened with Thanos, with like everything, and it's just now that you feel any sort of loss with Aunt May,
I mean,
like
I think the problem with that
losing.
is, I mean, I think the problem with that, like comparing Green Goblin to Thanos, for instance, is the fact that aside from Peter never really being the MVP in the fights, but Peter also got blipped completely. So it's like, we barely got to see him like in his breaking point or fighting his greatest nemesis. Really, like Thanos was a big threat, of course, but it's like,
Yeah,
he
and
wasn't.
just like you, I felt like Tony dying would be the catalyst to him becoming Spider-Man, but that's not the case.
That's what I've always thought it was going to be back at Endgame. But
That's
yeah,
but that's not the case. It's Aunt May dying where he becomes Spider-Man. And I get that he loses, frankly, everything. He loses everything, but to me it kind of feels like, I don't know, I'm just conflicted with Aunt May's death, because at the same time she dies and I feel bad for Peter, but at the same time it's like she it feels like she shouldn't have died in the first place, you know?
I think the whole point was the fact that they tried to make it seem like Peter could have stopped everything, whether he just like send them all back to their time period, but he took like a big risk with trying to help these guys without realizing that there could be no good deed comes without a greater cause or without great consequences. And
Yeah,
with
and
but like with
didn't I
going with the Thanos
there's
thing.
this yeah,
Oh yeah, but
and
going
there's
with okay,
goddamn. There's
okay.
also this thing that it's also kind of like a nitpick at the same time, but the reason why Aunt May tells him to help all of these people is because of Green Goblin.
Yeah,
But Aunt May says, "Are they all like this?" And Peter says, "Yeah, yeah, they're all like that." When that's actually not the case. They're all not like Green Goblin.
I mean,
Green
I think they're
Goblin,
all like crazy in a different way, but they're all kind of fucking insane.
yeah, but with Electro, just because there's like with Electro, he's just a villain because he wants more power, you know? And with the Lizard, the whole reason why he's a villain is because
He's a lizard.
to be a fucking lizard or something. But with Sandman, that's my problem.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
just there. He's not necessarily a villain. He's there because he wants his daughter.
He's a criminal for
But
sure, because he's still
like,
like has done shitty things, but it's like he's not on the same levels.
The only reason why he's a villain is because he's fish. That's like the whole thing, you know?
Yeah.
Like, not all of them are the same. Like, but that's not a reason why. Like, that's not a big criticism, you know? Like
Yeah,
all
I
of
see
the
it's
other
like a
stuff that
nitpicky
we've
thing.
already talked about. Like, that's just a nitpick.
I think going back to Thanos for a second, what I was gonna say is the fact that it's like, yeah, he fought Thanos, but like, I guess like I'm probably gonna end up repeating myself honestly, because it's like, he wasn't really like, he wasn't doing well against that fight either. So it's like, it's not like I don't know. Actually, now I go back and I was just thinking about it, and then it's like, wait, no, that definitely wouldn't have made sense too much, because it's like, I still think like, I think the whole argument of like he should have fought harder. I don't know if I would really agree to that, because he wasn't really like that strong in the Thanos fight, for instance. And I don't even think and I'm not saying he's incompetent or anything, but like in Civil War, even he had only recently got his powers back, and so he was still kind of, a newbie in that fight, and he wasn't really like that. Not that he wasn't helpful, but he wasn't really the strongest in Infinity War.
That could have that also proves something, Marcos.
Yeah.
Toby is the strongest Spider-Man of them all.
Yeah.
Because Green Goblin is this big villain towards Tom Holland, but think about it. For Toby, in the first film, he just beat him right there, like,
Yeah, no, I'm not like, but my point is like, I don't know, like Peter fighting harder. I think he fought his hardest in his fights, but but Green Goblin just got the better of him. Like, I know Thanos is Thanos, but aside from Peter not really being couldn't even handle Thanos either, like Green Goblin doesn't really take away the fact that Green Goblin is still like a terrifying threat,
I know.
I see the difference, but
that's also another problem with like the Marvel movies, is that they also have this problem with like power struggle, because for example, Spider-Man fights these like more powerful threats that are much stronger than Green Goblin. For example, Doctor Strange. He beats Doctor Strange in a realm where Doctor Strange controls everything.
Yeah, he outsmarted him, though.
Doctor Strange, and he outsmarted Doctor Strange, but with Green Goblin, he's just a regular super soldier type villain that, in my opinion, like, Spider-Man could have beat. Like, that's also a nitpick,
I mean, I don't know if I agree. I don't. It's like saying, like, do you think after Peter Parker outsmarting Doctor Strange, do you think he would have been able to take down Bucky as the Winter Soldier?
I mean, that's also like a big, like, that's where these power struggles come in,
Yeah, but it can't, like, whereas like with the fucking realm that he fought Doctor Strange in, like, there's a lot more room for him to be creative and just thinking like outside the box. Whereas this one, he's in a closed apartment, and it's like a power struggle, and the fact that Green Goblin can take being thrown down different levels, different stories of the apartments, and he's almost just as like, just as impervious.
Can also,
Yeah, I know, that's the thing. Like, it's like he's fighting it's like he's fighting himself, basically.
Yeah.
That's how I sort of see it, because even if Thanos was a stronger opponent, and even though he outsmarted characters like Mysterio and Doctor Strange, this Green Goblin is still like his own entity, like he's still like, it's a different environment, different circumstances, and it's like, Green Goblin is just a fucking psychopath, He beats, like, Peter literally beats the fuck out of him, and he's just laughing. It's like, whereas at least if he punched Thanos would at least said, ow. I don't know. Yeah. Speaking of Green Goblin, I fucking love that fight sequence in the apartment. It's one I love this music, and it's probably one of
I
my favorite scenes in
I
the film.
personally feel like it's the best fight scene
Definitely up
in
there,
the
yeah.
entire
I was
movie.
like
It's
stuck
the
between
best
that one
fight.
or I was stuck between that one or Doc Ock's fights because I also really like Doc Ock's fight.
I like Doc Ock's fight, but it ends really abruptly.
Yeah, but yeah. Any closing thoughts on Aunt May's death?
I feel like I already said like my take. Like again, I don't hate Aunt May's death. Like I don't hate it. It touches every emotional thing in my body. Like I cried because Aunt May died, but at the same time, she wasn't really there. She
Yeah.
wasn't really there, you
Like
know?
you didn't like have the attachment, but you understood what they were going for. Like, but you just weren't
It
attached to
it's
Aunt May's
kind
death.
it's kind of like with Uncle Ben in Amazing Spider-Man 1. He wasn't really there, you know?
I
But at
mean,
the same time he dies, you understand
I
the
understand.
emotional interaction that he has with the character, and that's why it's sad,
I mean,
you
like
know?
I feel like I mean that's sort of how I felt with Toby's death, with Toby's Uncle Ben's death, because it's like we're like again they died in their first movie of a trilogy, so it's like you barely got around to knowing them. Well, I actually have more issues with how Uncle Ben's death was handled in the Amazing Spider-Man. I think my thing is that like I don't even think we as the audience like having to connect to the Uncle Ben is really the main thing. Like we just need to understand why Peter feels the way he feels and why his motivations shift to like more vengeful later on. Like I understand that even if Aunt May wasn't. I mean, I liked Aunt May in this trilogy, and it was easier for me to empathize with her death more than the Uncle Ben's because she was in these movies. She was in multiple. She was in 3 movies, and honestly, I think they wasted her care. I think they had a big wasted potential in Endgame to having her not blip because imagine living in Endgame where Peter blipped, but she didn't. I think that would have been fucking cool. Like I think I see more potential in how they wrote Aunt May in these movies, and because I think I saw more of her than I did with the Uncle Ben's, actually made me more attached to her death a little bit more. So that's
Yeah.
why I get that. I think because like while some audience members may not feel so attached to Aunt May's death, at least like we can see like why Peter is motivated because we know how much of an influence she was in his life. Hell, there was a nice scene with Peter and MJ where he talks about like amongst the best the most normal day of his week is when everybody that he knew that he cared about found out that he was Spider-Man. And that was like MJ, Ned, Happy, and Aunt May. And it was like I thought it was a really cute story because it's like it's appreciating his circle of his circle basically, his circle of friends. But it's like I was gonna say more so his family basically.
Yeah.
But that's me. I think at first I was very like I thought I was conflicted, but then I think the more I think about it, the more I was like, actually, no, I think I kind of like it.
Yeah, like I understand why Aunt May dies, but you know,
Yeah, the
it's
emotion,
still
the
it's
attachment needed to be
enjoyed.
there.
Yeah,
But one
the
thing I can,
attachment between audience.
yeah, all I can say is, while Aunt May's death may not have caught your attention in terms of an emotion, I definitely know what caught everybody's attention to emotion. We're gonna talk about the Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's return into
I
this
have
movie.
a lot of thoughts
Andrew
with this
Garfield is officially the worst liar in history.
for sure.
But yeah, let's get this one out of the way. How did you feel with seeing them again, or how they were brought into this? How they were brought back up to horse? Because now
That's what I
that
want to talk
yeah, it was
about.
more so the how I felt
That's
like you
what I
wanted to
want to
talk
talk
about.
about. How
Ned,
they were brought in.
we had a whole movie.
Why did they bring Toby in the way they did? Like I don't like the how they bring Andrew in. I really like it because it's like, oh hey, like I'm Spider-Man, and like
Yeah,
I
it was
like
cute.
that
I liked
because
that scene.
that's how he is, but Toby, it's like they just brought him out of like a poker game or something and there he is.
He's a youth pastor.
It's like why didn't you bring Toby in a more epic way, you know?
I was
Like he
fine
could
with
have
how they.
been brought in. He could have, but it felt very samey. The way that they brought in Peter B. Parker from Into the Spider-Verse, like that's the way they bring in Toby. It to me, it just felt very samey
Hmm.
because they already did it with Peter B. Parker, and the way that he's got his clothes on, the way he looks like a hobo, it feels very samey with Peter B. Parker, and when they do it with Toby, when they do it with Peter B. Parker, it works because it's not an established Spider-Man. It wasn't in any movies, but here you have already a trilogy of Spider-Man 1 through 3 with Toby, and then it's arguably the biggest Spider-Man ever. Like everybody, when you talk to everybody, they say Toby's the best Spider-Man.
Well, I know some
And
people that say Andrew, and I know some people that said Tom, but
yeah,
yeah.
but Marcos, like the majority, the majority of people say Toby's the best Spider-Man, and then the way that they bring him in is in like this hobo, like if he just ate like pizzas
I
and
don't
like
know how I feel. I don't know if
you
I
just
agree
got
with.
him out of the house. Like it's to me, it was like I wanted him to enter in a more epic way. Like
I don't
he's
know if I
already
agree with
right
that.
in
I
there with
kind
the
of.
Raimi suit. You know, he's in there with the Raimi. You see the suit, and he's like, "Hey," and to me, it would just been like way better. You
I
know,
don't know if I agree with that because, like, I kind of like. Okay, the only I think my main problem would be like, okay, they brought Andrew Garfield, and then like that same second they immediately did it. Like Ned, like they immediately brought it back. Like like Ned does the portal thing 2 times, and then like try to get Tom Holland, but they conveniently get the wrong Peter. I would say that would be my
and
issue, but
I like the way that they say the real Spider-Man. Like they go, I want like we need to bring the real Peter Parker. And then it's like they bring in Toby, and I'm like, hell yeah, that is the real Peter Parker.
But I kind of like the way they brought Toby, because like Toby is always like such an awkward is like an awkward dude, and it's like he's like a little bit socially awkward, and it's like so into his character that he's like, oh yeah, I just went into this portal and oh it's gone now. Like I love that. Like that was I actually really like that. He's a little bit awkward, but it's like he's like the wise Peter Parker, so it's like he sees a portal, he goes in, and then it's like, hi, oh,
Yeah,
I know. I don't know, like to me, and also like
he is stiff and socially awkward, but at the same time, you also have to bring to account that we haven't seen Toby in like 10 years. Like it's been a decade since we see
I
Toby,
get
and
that, and maybe I would
this is
have
how you bring him in.
I would have agreed if it weren't for the fact that when they brought Andrew, they brought him in his Spider-Man uniform, and it's like he gets the Spider-Man reveal thing, and also I know we were just talking about the general consensus of Tobey Maguire being the best Spider-Man, but like I like his reveal because I remembered when there was the conversation between Andrew and Tobey of which one was better. I always see like people really liked Andrew Garfield, that he got the Spider-Man jokey personality, and Toby was like a perfect Peter Parker, and it's like, but even though I've grown towards Toby as Spider-Man because he does crack jokes, but Andrew was not like the geeky, or what I can like. Okay, you can make a good case in both of them, but it's like at least for their time of discussion, Toby was a more geek Peter, and then Andrew Garfield had the jokey, talk shit like while they're fighting Spider-Man better. So it's like so Andrew being revealed in the Spider-Man suit, and then Toby being revealed as Peter Parker. I kind of like that, and I don't know, like I would have been I would have agreed with you if they didn't already revealed Andrew Garfield in the Spider-Man suits. Because then that would have probably been samey and a little redundant if he was also in a Spider-Man suit. So the fact that he's like all dressed, but he still maintains a Spider-Man suit within himself, I kind of like that a lot, actually. I don't think I would have changed it really. I know we haven't seen the boy in a long time, but I wasn't really expecting him to enter with some epic showdown against some other goblin or whatever. I don't know. Like I was perfectly fine with how
No,
they were
no, no. I'm
introduced.
not. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that Andrew is like. I would have liked if they did like a difference because Andrew is that Spider-Man that is like, "Whoa, what's going on here?" And then Toby is the Spider-Man that knows what's going on because in the movie he does like he's searching for Tom Holland Spider-Man.
They both are.
He's
They both
searching.
are.
Yeah, they both are, but Andrew is more like, "Whoa, what's going on? What is this?" You know. But Toby is that Spider-Man that, okay, we have a mission, we have to do this.
To be fair, I kind of like the way that Andrew's the one that's like, "Oh, is it this thing?" Because like he's so curious about like
Yeah, like
everything,
I
and like he
like
shows
that.
his
I
geek,
like
he shows
that.
his geek side, and it's like it's also like very consistent with what ends up happening later. Like when we start talking about like how Tobey Maguire like shoots his webs, like it's organic. It's not like it's not from from a web shooter like Tom and Andrews. But it's
Yeah.
like the fact that even he was like I see like him being like geeking out in the beginning and then him later being like how the fuck does that even work with when they found out how Toby shoots his webs. Like I think those go two and two together. I thought it was such a cute scene. I thought the Andrew Garfield scene. I'm gonna say this. Like you were saying that the villains were the best things about the film. I was gonna say that Andrew Garfield was the best character in this entire film. I thought he was the most fun for me. Like he really stole the show, and it's like even some tiny scenes like when he was saying like how lame he is because like general consensus he was the weakest Spider-Man of the three, and then even Toby was like, hey, don't say like you're not lame, you're amazing, and he's the amazing Spider-Man, and it's like and plus their interactions are just so perfect, and Andrew in particular was just fucking amazing because it's like he's talking about how he's always he's always wanted brothers, and how he tells them how much he loves these two. Their chemistry, though, so much time. Like I really wish we had more time with Toby and Andrew, and this is what I was talking about in the beginning. That I did wish the movie was longer, but that's only because I really wanted more Toby and Andrew. I love their fucking chemistry, and I thought Andrew Garfield stole the
Yeah,
show.
that's why I wouldn't mind if this movie was 3 hours Endgame because a lot of people, me included, would argue that this is a much bigger movie than Endgame.
Yeah,
I would argue that in terms of continuity again and the how big this movie is for the universe, then Endgame is bigger, but us fans, this is a bigger movie.
I would honestly argue that No Way Home is a better movie than Endgame, but that's just me.
Yeah, I would also say that No Way Home is better than Endgame as well, but Endgame and Infinity War, I classify them as their own singular thing.
I would have agreed if they weren't so drastically different from each other. Like Infinity War was more Thanos' story, whereas Endgame is a time heist movie. But but I get it's like the Deathly Hallows parts 1 and 2. But they're just so different in comparison to each other. Sometimes I even forget that Endgame is a two-parter. But yeah, but I fucking love Andrew Garfield. He even the like I guess we can't talk about Andrew Garfield without talking about the scene where he sends MJ, which is reminiscent of how he didn't save Gwen Stacy. Easily my favorite scene in the entire movie because it sort of like redeemed his character, some like to the sense that he couldn't save Gwen Stacy, and that shit made me fucking cry. Shit got me
Yeah.
emotional.
Yeah. Like for me, for example, as well, I would have liked if they explained more with what's going on with Toby and what's going on with like Andrew.
Yeah,
Like
because we haven't seen those guys.
they brushed over it, but they didn't really like expand on it. They didn't
Yeah,
really
like
talk about it.
they have like little like conversations such as like how Toby and Mary Jane are in terms of their relationship, but we didn't really get to know much about Andrew. And ironically, even though Spider-Man 3 and the Amazing Spider-Man 2 are the weakest of their, trilogy slash duology, ironically, they ended those movies with me being more curious to see what would have happened in their universes. And this is like a perfect time to bring them back because it's like it's been so long at a point where it's like, what happened? What's going to happen afterwards? We never got to see a Spider-Man 4 on Tobey's side, and the Amazing Spider-Man 3, as well as like all the projects they had planned, including a Sinister Six movie, was also canceled. And so we never got to see what became of them after the events of their latest movies until this one. But it would have been interesting to definitely explore these characters. And honestly, maybe I don't know if you agree with me on this one, but like, there's also, now that we did get to see them come back, would you like to see them come back in a future movie? Like, like if Tobey gets another Spider-Man movie dedicated to himself, and same with Andrew. Or you think they should just not focus on those two and just focus on what they're doing with Tom?
That I want to talk about it in the future.
Okay, fair enough. But I really enjoyed everything about Andrew Garfield and Tobey. I think they were the best moments in the entire film. I think if there was a lot of issues with, like, say, the opening, or even how this entire thing could have been avoided, even though I was still okay with how everything was turned out, and there were just mostly like tiny things that that still does bother me. I was really mostly fine with it, but even if I wasn't, I think I can confidently say that if the first half didn't win you over, this definitely would. Seeing the three Spider-Men interacting would definitely save the movie for most, if they weren't already sold with the movie. I would argue with that,
Yeah.
But yeah, I love it.
I love it too.
I like even the little foreshadowing, the fact that Ned is technically is capable of being a goblin, and like in some comics when they referenced Harry.
I mean, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, I even like the Miles. I even like the Miles Morales piece.
I definitely enjoyed like the whole other Easter eggs between movies, but that's I would have liked if they did explore that more,
Yeah,
I would have liked it if they explored more, like, because we already know that Harry dies.
Yeah.
But what I don't like is that they use Harry as comedy.
Oh yeah.
Because I don't like where Ned said, that's a whole other thing. Like, Ned, there's sometimes I have a love-hate relationship with Ned, because sometimes I do like Ned. For example, in Homecoming, I liked Ned as the guy in the chair and everything, but where I don't like Ned is where everything that Ned does, the payoff is always comedy. Everything with Ned is comedy. Comedy this, comedy that. And when Tobey talks about Harry, it's just taken as this
As a joke.
funny thing.
Yeah, because
It's
like
taken as a joke.
and Harry's death was actually a genuinely emotional scene. And it's like,
Yeah.
he said that he died in his own arms after he tried to kill him, but it's like he sacrificed himself to save you.
Yeah, and the way that you talk about him it's heartbreaking, and then like it's taken as a joke, because everybody in the theater was laughing.
Yeah.
It happened to my theater. Like, when that happened,
No,
like,
it happened. It happened. It was mostly like Ned's reaction that got like a little chuckle, like got like a little laugh, because it's like it's ironic that both Peters have a best friend that eventually turned evil and tried to kill him.
Yeah, that's where I don't like it.
But then, the Harry and Tobey.
When a scene is supposed to be serious in tone, whenever it's Ned, it I don't like it that whenever it's Ned, a scene that is supposed to be serious in tone, it's changed to be like this lighthearted thing.
It's just like it's Ned's like facial expressions, really. Like it's just things about him. That's why when I think when you told me that he was going to be a goblin, and that Ned was supposed to be a goblin in some of the comics, I just couldn't see this Ned being that. Like I just couldn't take him like super seriously,
Yeah, because
you know?
in the comics, he turns into like Hobgoblin, and that's where I don't like this Ned to go, and I don't see this Ned going there because in all of these movies, he's just a jokester. And if he completely changes tone, and let's say in
It's gonna
another
be
movie
weird.
he completely changes tone to being this serious threat, the movie is gonna be shit because I don't see Ned as a threat.
Are you kidding me? Ned
Much,
is a fucking meme now.
much less to Peter, much less to Peter, and much less to how Peter is now.
And
Spider-Man.
there's no way in hell they can make him into a goblin, especially now that he's a meme.
Yeah, like I don't see them doing that either, but I do. But if they do it, I'm not gonna like it whatsoever.
Yeah, I seriously, unless they like recast him to like someone like way more menacing looking.
Not just not just menacing looking, but I feel like Ned is this character that if he turns villainous, nobody's gonna take him seriously.
Yeah. I mean, when you told me that he becomes a goblin, like I'm trying
And
to, I like
also,
picturing it with
like
this Ned is just weird.
all these other things, like him having magic, him having magic, these tingling feelings in his hands,
That
like
came that came out of nowhere.
everything that he says is just a joke, and every time that he just opens his mouth is just annoying. It's like for example, this scene where he's talking, I feel strange tinglings in my hands, and then Doctor Strange says you should probably see a physician. It's just annoying,
Or
you know?
whenever he actually opens the portal and accidentally frees Doctor Strange, it's like, did you
And
just open a
when he
portal?
when he uses magic, it's just like it comes straight out of nowhere.
Yeah,
And you could argue that yeah, it's the ring that he takes from Doctor Strange and then Peter Parker gives to Ned. It's just all of that is played as a joke, you know? And
yeah.
then
I would have been okay
and
with it
then
if there was set up.
and then in the plan, they're planning one of their big critical components to their plan succeeding is Ned. And it's like, for real? Ned is your big critical component to your plan actually working?
Yeah.
To him opening and closing portals? I
And
don't
even
think that's a good idea.
even then, I think
And
the weird thing is that the portal just conveniently wouldn't close, even though it would just close automatically the other times he's opened one.
and then he just, when he's out of that portal, he just opens it out of nowhere. And it's like, he just opens it without any trouble, you know?
Yeah, Ned is the Rey Skywalker of Spider-Man confirmed.
Because it's like, if everything that he does is played as a joke, him being a critical component to your plan, I'm not gonna take it seriously. I'm just gonna be like, what, really? You're doing that?
Ned is the Jar Jar Binks of the Spider-Man trilogy. But yeah, nah, I get you. I kind of agree with this.
Yeah.
But yeah. But now for the final battle. You know, the
Now let's
entire.
talk about the final battle. I really like it, but there
I
are also some things that I don't like about it.
did you like the movie?
I liked the movie. I definitely loved the movie, but it also the same time it's not devoid from criticism. You know.
Yeah, but I enjoyed this. I enjoyed this fight. I enjoyed it a lot. I liked how in the beginning they were just terrible at working together because, Andrew and Toby have either had little to no experience with working together as a team.
Uh,
I said little to no experience.
uh,
I know Toby worked with Harry. Okay, let's hear it. Let's hear
Here's
it. Let's
the
hear
thing.
it.
I don't like how I enjoy that this is. I enjoy the fact that this is Tom Holland's movie, and that it makes sense that he is the leader of, you know, all of the
Are you
Spider-Men.
mad because Toby is Peter too?
No, I'm just a little bit annoyed that okay, they show Toby as this wise Peter Parker. Now that he has all of these years as Spider-Man behind him and he's still Spider-Man to this day. What I just don't find to make any sense in my point of view is that just because Tom Holland was in the Avengers doesn't mean that he should be this leader and this catalyst to their plan succeeding, you know? I
I don't
do
know.
agree that he's still Peter Parker and he does have strategy because he was in the Avengers,
I think
but
that gives him an edge of being able to be more compatible to work as a team, whereas the only time we've seen Toby work together with someone was with Harry, and that's like God knows how long ago it was.
yeah, but even when he's in this team, this Spider-Man led team, I would have liked it more if Toby was the leader because when there's this scene where they fail and they all take off their masks and they say Peter 1, Peter 2, Peter 3, you know that scene?
Yeah.
They all say, "Oh, the Avengers, what was that? Were you in a band? Was that a band?"
I thought that shit was funny.
I I personally don't like that because again, it's a part of the movie where it's supposed to be serious. It's a serious tone. They
I
just
mean, I think at that
they
point they
just
wanted
throw
to
that
have.
away to
I
like
mean, I think
a
that point they
joke.
were trying to. I think that point they wanted to have fun, and I think it was a fun
For
scene.
yeah, like I
They
agree
definitely
that
wanted to. I know it was like serious in some cases, but that scene in particular, I think when they wanted to keep it serious, they did a good job maintaining its serious tone. But you can tell they wanted to have fun with this movie, like
yeah, they
especially with
did.
that. So especially with them working together, I don't think I would have been happy if the entire thing was too serious. I think them like cracking jokes and just having a good chemistry with one another is what kind of made the movie like stand out
Oh,
to me.
like I like that. I like that, because that's what Spider-Man is. Spider-Man is this character where he's in a fight, he does crack jokes, but at the same time, once he's in that team with all those other Spider-Men, I just personally it for me those jokes in the final battle, it was just like a hit or miss for me.
Yeah, again, humor subjective. I personally
Because
just
at the
found it.
same
I just
time,
yeah.
it's just like I said, the humor there is subjective. Like for me personally, I just didn't find it funny when they just said, "Or you, it's a band, or you were you in a band?" Because
That's
it's like,
just.
bro, you were already in a movie where you worked together in a team with Harry. You already were in a team with Harry, and you led that team. So it's not like it doesn't matter how many years passed to that movie. He still should be this Spider-Man where he is the superior Spider-Man to them both, and he has the most experience being Spider-Man. So it's not like just because you're older doesn't mean that oh you don't know shit after all of that that's happened.
Yeah, I think that one I do. That one I can agree.
Because
I just like that at
he
least
has the
something.
most experience to being Spider-Man. It's
Yeah,
now it's not like just because all of that time has passed you don't know what you're doing, especially when it's your villain. You know how to defeat them. You've done it before. You can do it again. You know?
again like I just like that they actually took into account the fact that Tom Holland's Peter was actually like being with the Avengers does amount to something. The fact that Peter can be somewhat coordinated with in a team in like
Yeah,
a team
it
environment. That's what I
does.
like about that.
Yeah, it does. It does amount to something that he was in the Avengers, but it doesn't mean that
But
Toby doesn't know what he's doing or that
but I
Andrew
don't
doesn't
think
know what he's
but I don't
doing.
think but like the thing is Toby was the first to keep his composure, and it's like, even when they got off track with the fucking Avengers talk, he was like, how is this helping? And then it's like, okay, we could like work together and everything, and then he's like, okay. Like even Toby was the one that's like, okay, like the first to calm down and go, and he was the one that made the strategy of like going for one target.
Yeah,
Yeah, like even though like
but
Tom Holland is technically Peter 1, like Toby was the one that like thought, okay, we'll take one target and then we'll focus on that one target before we move on to the next. That was like technically speaking Toby's idea.
yeah,
But yeah,
but
but I did see him as the wise one, you know.
yeah, like that's where they succeed. Like you still see Toby as the wise Spider-Man because of his age and because of all of the experience that he has as Spider-Man.
And not to jump too much
But
ahead, but one of my favorite scenes is when he prevents Tom Holland from killing Green Goblin, because like the last time we've seen Toby was when he just got out of the influence of the Venom symbiote, where he was like fueled with anger and revenge, and I think one of the last interactions he's had with Aunt May was, even though like we never really outright knew if Aunt May knew that Peter Parker was Spider-Man, we got an idea that she may have known something. And then it's like there's the last conversation they had was that like, why would Spider-Man kill Sandman? Like Spider-Man doesn't kill, like he represents good. And that was like one of the last conversations we've seen him interacting with his Aunt May, at least the last time we saw it. And then we see this Tom Holland Spider-Man trying to avenge his Aunt May's death by the hands of Green Goblin, not only a former enemy of Toby, but like, he knows what it, like giving into this anger and hatred wasn't going to bring back Aunt May. So I find it like, I found it touching the fact that Toby, after Tom beats Green Goblin, he was the one that prevents him from killing Green Goblin. And just like being the one to like, again, like part of the reason why he was the wise one for me, like he was the one to like stop him from giving into this hate and anger that Toby one time did as well. I mean, I did have a slight existential crisis when he got stabbed, but that's besides the point.
everybody did.
Like that my theater like went fucking like screamed when Toby got stabbed, because it's like, oh my god,
Yep.
they're like, are they really gonna kill him off? But like, fuck, they didn't. I would have been super sad. But yeah, I saw like when I thought about you when I saw that scene, because I was like, if he did die, Gene would have given this movie a 0 out of 10.
I would have. I would have.
But yeah, and honestly, that scene with Doc Ock, the power of the sun in the palm of your hands, and saying that scene,
Right.
that scene was fucking awesome. I loved it so much. Yeah, I
Because
just had a
that's
lot
the
of.
thing. Like, I like that Doc Ock isn't necessarily a villain, because everything that he did
He did it for the greater good.
because, yeah, and he was being controlled by those robot hands. And
The inhibitor chip.
Now that we're talking about Doc Ock, there's a scene with Doc Ock that I just completely hate. And it's a scene where he's with Aunt May, and she's trying to give him water,
the octopus. Yeah,
and she says that, salt water, because you're an octopus. Who the fuck wrote that scene?
I thought that scene was funny. Come on, she was like cracking a fucking joke.
No.
Again, the humor part is subjective.
Stupid.
It's stupid, but it's supposed to be.
You're gonna get fired. You're gonna get fired.
I think the man got a raise.
No, he should get fired, or she should get fired, or whatever, because that scene was so dumb.
I didn't even mind that. I thought that was just so stupid in a funny way, because it's like, of course she's just being quirky just for the fuck of it, Obviously she knows he's a human being, but it's like, hell, she's making a joke over the fact that his name is Dr. Octopus. It's supposed to be stupid. Like, I don't know. I wouldn't take that scene seriously. And it was just a 2 second scene. It really doesn't amount to anything.
Yeah, but
Like, it's like at worst,
exactly, exactly.
at
It
worst, a
doesn't amount
face.
to
At,
exactly. It doesn't amount to anything, and it should have never been in the movie. But that scene you were already talking about, Daredevil and the court and all that, isn't supposed to be in the movie.
Not because it could fuck with the pacing a little bit, and I can understand why they would take that one. But I don't know. I wanted to. I would have liked to see that scene. I don't know. I don't know how long that.
Exactly.
I don't know how long that scene was. I don't know how that scene was handled. Who knows? Maybe when maybe when it comes out on DVD, we'll get deleted scenes, and then we would see. Because, like, there are justifications why some scenes are cut, but then some like and some scenes that could have been deleted do make through the crack. But yeah, well, this one doesn't really amount to anything, but it's also just a 20-second humor stuff. Like, it doesn't hurt anybody for it to be in the movie, but at the same time, if it got cut, sure, it doesn't amount to anything. But I don't know, like, it's really, I don't care. I thought it was just silly because she's just kind of quirky in that sense. I mean, I don't think
Yeah.
Doc. I mean, I didn't mind it. Again, humor is subjective, and there's really not a point to, like, discussing things with, like, such as humor. But it's like, it didn't bother me because she's already shown to be kind of quirky, and her being quirky
Yeah,
to a guy called Doctor Octopus with salt
yeah,
water, like, it's just, yeah.
but bro, like when I watched this movie 3 times, and I watched it three times and with three different groups of people. I saw it with my family, my girlfriend, and my gym bro. And one, my mom hated that scene, and that says something, and my girlfriend hated that scene.
It's funny you say that because
So it's like,
it's funny you say that, but I had the opposite experience. I saw it with like three different people, and and we even had a stupid laugh on that scene.
so, and even my brother like didn't like that scene.
I mean, again,
And
like,
he's
we can go back and
so
forth. We can go back and forth on this one, but I can also tell you that I had the opposite experience. I saw it with different people, and we all laughed at that scene. So I don't know. I really don't know what to say about that one. Again, it's humor. There's not really a point to really discussing humor because there's nothing objective about it. The only thing that's
yeah,
objective is that it doesn't amount to anything. But this movie clearly wants to have a personality, and so it decides to have some stupid humor. So it's like it's really, I don't know. I don't have enough to say. Like, everybody that you watched it with hated that scene. Everybody that I watched it with found that scene funny. Maybe one person I saw it with didn't find it all that funny, and it's not really the biggest knee slapper joke in the whole planet. But it's like, hey, it's a
yeah,
Jamaican
but
joke. It's a joke.
it's just like
It's making fun of a joke. It's making fun of a guy that's named Doctor Octopus. It's really not that big of a deal.
yeah, but I just find it like just annoying how they just make fun of his name and then all of the other like I like where they just make fun of the villain and it's just one time and that's it. But with Doc Ock, it was just like they made fun of his name, Otto Octavius. Okay, that's good. But then they just do it
Really,
again with
that
Ahmed.
was the one I didn't find funny. I didn't
See,
get why
well,
it was.
then
I don't understand why that one would have been funny because that is his actual name. It would have been
I
funnier if it was the octopus joke, and then they did the
I didn't
saltwater.
I didn't find that funny either.
No, I know.
But
I'm just
it's
saying,
just
like, that
like
one. That one I could probably tell you with confidence that I don't understand why they were laughing at because that is his actual name.
yeah, but this is where you find a different contrast between like phase 1 and like now phase 4, where phase 1 you can tell that with Iron Man, the first Iron Man movie, it had its jokes here and there, but it didn't have too many jokes where you would be like, "Oh my god, here we go again."
I agree with that, but that's more of a Marvel problem. That's been a problem with most of these movies. Like, even Guardians Volume 2 and Thor Ragnarok could be argued
Yeah,
if they had too much humor.
that that's what I say. Like it's not a problem with Spider-Man No Way Home per se, but it's a problem with like what I have with Marvel, how it is right now.
I
Like
mean,
what they intend to do right
much.
now with their thing.
I mean, much
Because
like how much.
I saw Hawkeye, and that's like the biggest Disney Plus show that has like all of the episodes are full on comedy, and I didn't like Hawkeye that much.
The character or
I
the
can
show?
say
Because actually, I'm gonna give it a little hot take. Hawkeye
I
was my
like
favorite.
Hawkeye the character, but I don't like the Disney Plus show all that much.
I'm gonna give you
I
a hot.
liked it,
I'm
but
gonna
it's
give you a hot take.
probably like pretty like above average, you
I'm
know.
gonna give you. I'm
But it's
gonna give you a hot take. Hawkeye is my favorite of the 4 Disney Plus shows because it's the only. It's the few that it's the only one that has very little issues in terms of how the characters and world building was handled. And in that sense, that's why it was currently my favorite of the Disney Plus show.
but I don't like it that much.
I
But
mean,
it's not
I give it a 7, but it's like still.
yeah, like I would give it like a 6, but it's not like for me. It's not like one
Yeah,
where
but
I'm like Jesus Christ.
in
Stop.
comparison to the other films, in comparison to the other Disney Plus shows, I like it more because like I had issues with WandaVision, Loki, and Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Like that's for me. Like for me, like Falcon and the Winter Soldier. That's probably like my favorite one out of all 4 of them.
Really, Falcon and the Winter Soldier is your favorite one?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, because with Hawkeye, there were a lot of points where I feel like this certain character should have won, and then it's this character wins against this certain character, and it's like for me it just like felt kind of off.
Yeah.
Like for example, I'm gonna spoil Hawkeye right now. When they say that like Kingpin dies, but he doesn't actually really, and then certain things where Yelena Belova fights Kate Bishop, where it's like she should clearly get her ass handed to her. It's like she can get into a fight with Yelena and actually like even survive. Like for me, it's like okay, I don't mind it, but at the same time, it's like normal, I guess.
I think the main thing I see is the fact that clearly the two of us see the quality of the face of the MCU of Marvel's current track records differently. Even though I prefer like a more mature settings, I don't mind there to be a little bit more humor and a little bit of personality. Because at the end of the day, like
Oh
my investment phase.
no! Like, don't get me wrong. I don't mind it there being humor and personality in a movie or a TV show. I don't mind that at all. But when it's done too much, that's where I'm like, really? You have to do this?
Yeah, but again, like the humor thing is subjective. I don't know. Again, there's
Yeah.
really I can see it. I can see what you mean. But if I do find it funny, I can't really agree. Again, there's nothing too much too objective because even if too much humor does come into play, if it doesn't interfere with the story progression or just the plot in general, and it's just haha funny moments, it technically doesn't really ruin the overall experience. Same with the Doctor Octopus joke. It's there, sure, doesn't add
That's what I
anything,
say
but it
again.
doesn't take
That's what I say
away.
again. Like with other things of this movie, I can tell you that it's not devoid of criticism. And again, like all of the other things that I've said, like with the TVA stuff and No Way Home and all that, that's like just a nitpick. But just because that doesn't happen doesn't mean I don't hate the movie, you know?
Yeah.
Like again, with all of the jokes that are in this movie, that doesn't mean that I don't hate this movie. Because with comedy, for me, for example, it's like I don't mind that it's there, but at the same time, if you do it too much, I don't mind it either. You know? But at the same time, if something's stupid, I am gonna call it out. And if there's stupid writing per se in a movie, if it's Spider-Man or Batman or whatever, I'm just gonna call it out and say, this was stupid, but it doesn't have anything to do with me hating the movie or me liking the movie.
I would mostly just focus on like, if something was actually like badly written as opposed to just something that's just stupid and that's about it, really. Like, I don't know. It's gonna sound typical, but I don't really care too much about about that part. Really, it didn't take away from anything from me.
Yeah.
And existing is just that existing. That's the worst I could say. But I don't know. I agree, but at the same time, if I do find it funny, I can't argue with that one. Really.
Like, that's a whole other thing. Like, if I'm being overly critical, like, that doesn't mean that I don't like the movie. Because, for example, there were a lot of things in Hawkeye that I liked, but there were also a lot of things in Hawkeye that I didn't like.
I think that's just the conversations of just objectivity versus subjectivity. Like obviously, when something is objectively when something is handled objectively poorly, then yeah, there's nothing really you can say about it. Like the Electro stuff, Technically, he didn't really know who Peter Parker as Spider-Man, so he technically shouldn't be here. And so that's still a plot hole, and that's something that is not really defensible. However, did it ruin your own personal enjoyment of the film? Probably not, but it is still a plot hole, Like that's where the conversation really comes in. Humor is just the only thing that we can't really discuss objectively because what I find funny, you might not find funny, and vice versa. The only thing we can both agree is that the Dr. Octopus shit, like the Dr. Octopus joke, doesn't add anything to the story, and if you remove it out of the picture, nothing would be lost. And that is not an opinion; that is a fact. Like Dr. Octopus joke doesn't come into play in any sort of capacity. So that's something that is objective, but the humor itself, that's something that we can't judge objectively. But yeah.
Moving on.
But moving on to the wait, shit! I looked at the wrong list. All right, so now for I would assume, I don't even know if this is really a controversial part. I was gonna say like the most controversial thing of the whole movie, but I don't know. I definitely think this is the most interesting thing to talk about: the ending when Peter Parker just wished that everybody forgot who that Peter Parker. Everybody forgets about Peter Parker, period. Like, or even if he was associated with Spider-Man. It seems like everybody just forgot who Peter Parker is at the end.
I love it. I love
here's
that ending.
Here's the thing. I actually like the ending, and I think I know why they went with that ending. Because I think it's because of Sony and Disney's like complete falling out, and they still felt obligated. They still had to make this movie, conclude Tom Holland's trilogy with these characters, with Happy and stuff. I remember when a couple of years ago when we talked about this issue that Sony and Disney were having after Far From Home, which ended with this plot twist that everybody knows who Peter Parker is. We were concerned that if Tom Holland were to continue as Peter, it would not feel like we're doing it justice because you would technically not even be allowed to use the MCU characters like Happy, Aunt May. You can't reference Tony Stark. But with how this movie ended, you did good. Like I can actually see a movie where Sony does things on their own.
Well, they're still gonna continue the MCU storyline, Marcos.
Well, yeah, but what about with Spider-Man?
Yeah.
Also, okay, then fuck me then.
they made a deal where they're still gonna make new stuff.
And then on the flip side, here's another thing that I also thought was a good one. Even then, a lot of people really did not like the fact that Tom Holland Spider-Man was like so solely like Iron Man, like solely dependent on Iron Man, like with his how he's the Iron Manization of Spider-Man. He never really felt like he was his own Spider-Man. And with this whole trilogy, the whole point of this trilogy and going up to this movie, the way it ended, Tom Holland can finally be his own Spider-Man without Stark Industries and everything, He is his own Spider-Man.
That's why I said at the beginning of the Slutcast that I see this movie as him finally becoming Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Because in Homecoming, he wasn't Spider-Man. Far From Home, he wasn't completely Spider-Man. And in this one, he finally becomes Spider-Man. Spider-Man is supposed to be.
His own Spider-Man, really. Because, like, he was a version of Spider-Man, but not his own full-fleshed Spider-Man. And honestly, I really want to see where they take this character, I really want to see what they do with this. Considering that also
Me
Spider-Man is
too.
like the only, it's considering that also the fact that unfortunately Spider-Man is like the only thing that I'm even so much as invested into the Phase 4, because the multiverse is cool, but I don't know how I feel about it personally. But Spider-Man is like the one character I was still invested with post Phase 3.
Me too. Like I really like the way that they end this Spider-Man because finally he finally has he can't because one of the biggest Spider-Man character traits is that he can never catch a break.
Yeah,
That's one of the biggest character traits of being Spider-Man is that whatever he does, he can never catch a break. Even if he saves even if he saves somebody or if he saves the world or if he does anything remotely generous or selfish or selfless or whatever, something's always going to happen that's going to fuck everything up. Not because it's his fault, not because it has anything to do with him either. It's because with great power comes great responsibility. And he feels that he has a responsibility to be Spider Man. And this ending completely uh, saves this franchise for me because everybody forgetting that he's Peter Parker, he loses MJ, he loses Ned, he loses Aunt May, and he loses Happy. And even though he doesn't personally feel like he wants that, he feels like he has to do it
yeah, because
because
the problem
it
got bigger. Like it's not just a matter of it's not just that his friends can't get into college. Now it's like everything was about to go terribly wrong if the spell doesn't go undone.
because even though he wants to be with MJ, he can't,
He
and
can't
he
do
understands that,
he can't do
and
both
he knows
Spider-Man.
that
He can't do both Spider-Man and
because
settle.
he knows the more he's with MJ, the more danger she's going to be in.
Yeah,
And that's what I feel that he thought. He himself thought that at first he wanted to be back with MJ, but then he realized that this is an out. This is a way for him to save MJ from everything bad that would have happened. Because the way that Andrew says, I lost my MJ and I couldn't save her, it stings. And it
yeah,
stung Peter. And he doesn't want to put himself in that position. And the way that he can't put himself in that position is if he doesn't know her.
or if she doesn't know him, really. But yeah, no, I
Well,
think
I mean, it goes both ways, you know?
yeah, but I find yeah, I agree with everything you said basically. I genuinely yeah, I love how this ending was handled. Really, I enjoyed everything about it. I really want to see where they take this character. I really like how he makes this selfless act that benefited everybody, even though he has to live in this shitty apartment. Like, yeah, I think wasted
Because
opportunities. They
that's
didn't get the guy
also
that's
another thing. That's also another thing that happened in Spider-Man 2 is that in Tobey Spider-Man 2,
yeah,
he wanted to be with MJ, but he can't.
he
He
couldn't.
can't. Not because he didn't love her, not because he couldn't, but it's because he has a bigger responsibility to be Spider-Man, to help people. And this Peter, Tom Holland's Peter, now has a chance to do that, to be Spider-Man.
Yep. And
And that
now
was one of the big things why I didn't like this Spider-Man all that much because
Tom Holland's yeah,
right right through Homecoming and right through Far From Home, he felt like Batman Beyond. This billionaire Tony Stark giving him all this wealth, all these things that this is how he becomes Spider-Man. taking Tony's legacy and making it his own. I personally didn't like that. I didn't like how this Spider-Man was basically becoming Batman Beyond, and that was the way that they were handling him. But now, with this movie, it kind of fixes the whole narrative that they had with Homecoming and with Far From Home. And that's why I see all of these three films as one full story. Because even though everything happens, let's say Homecoming happens, while I was watching Homecoming, I didn't like Tom Holland's Spider-Man all that much, and even though Far From Home was happening, I didn't like Tom Holland's Spider-Man all that much either. But now with this movie, I can clearly say without a doubt that Tom Holland's Spider-Man could become the best Spider-Man.
I think
In
all
my
three.
opinion.
I think the best thing about this movie is that all three Spider-Man has definitely grown on me, and I think it's also grown on many people. Because even when I think I back then I would have said that Andrew Garfield was my least favorite of the three. Now it's like, all three of them, like, they're all their own different interpretations of Peter Parker. They all go through their journeys differently, and it makes me appreciate the different interpretations even more. So it's like, yeah, like, it makes me, again, I just want to see where they take Tom Holland's, especially because this is a new direction that they're going with. And even though this trilogy is over, like, he's still playing Spider-Man. And yeah, who knows what they will do with him? I mean, they had the symbiote post-credit ending, so maybe he'll get to fight another alien monster, Venom.
Yeah.
But speaking of Venom, what did you think of Tom Hardy being in the MCU for like 5 seconds?
I did not like that. I did not like that at all. I didn't even like if he was in the MCU to begin with.
You didn't like Venom Let There Be Carnage, from what you told me.
I didn't not like Venom Let There Be Carnage. I did not like if this Venom was put into the MCU. And at the same time, that's also another plot hole. How the fuck did he get there if he doesn't know who Peter Parker is?
That was something that I hoped the multiverse. That I was hoping that this is part of the thing.
The way that because if you see Venom Let There Be Carnage's post-credit scene, he knows who Peter Parker is Spider-Man after he goes to the
after the fact.
He goes to the MCU. Yeah.
See, to me, this was before the movie, and this was after Loki. So I just thought it was because of the events of Loki, but it turns out not to be the case, or at least like it seems to be the case. Like, or at least it seemed like it was because he knew Peter Parker was Spider-Man. But I thought it was because of the events of Loki, because of the multiverse like bridging together. So like I've always thought it was like, well, now they could potentially bring people from other universes at a random point, or just how the multiverses were collided. That's what I've always thought it was, but the way how No Way Home handled it just seemed like it was, because he knew Peter Parker was Spider-Man, even though he's never seen a Spider-Man before. We don't even know which universe he came from that had a Peter Parker as Spider-Man, or how he found out about it. And then it's like, he only knew about it after the fact. So it does confuse me now. I'm hoping Doctor Strange, the sequel, like, does answer that question a little bit, because right now the whole multiverse thing, as interesting as it is, there's a lot of confusion, and I'm not sure if Loki is even influencing these movies in the slightest, or if until Ant-Man and the Wasp, because that's just how I've always thought it was handled in Let There Be Carnage. But now I don't even know anymore. The only thing I like is the fact that now Tom Holland has his own Venom. We're going to see a different Venom that isn't Tom Hardy. And I'm curious to see how how they'll handle Venom in in a different interpretation that isn't, a wedding couple. But yeah. It was kind of interesting. It was kind of funny how people were hyped up over the fact that Tom Hardy was in the MCU, and he only appeared there for like a few seconds.
Yeah.
Made it seem like it's almost like he didn't really need it to be there in the first place. But,
I I just don't really like Tom Hardy's. I like Tom Hardy as Venom, but I don't like the way that they're going about it. I don't like that Venom is in another universe and this is how Venom is introduced in the MCU. I just don't really like that.
You don't like that he's a loser in his hometown?
No, not that. I feel like that's relatable in a way, but I just don't like that the way that Venom is introduced in the MCU is through another universe. I
They're
would have
Tom Hardy.
preferred it if it was just the same, just the same as Spider-Man 3. But because the way that Spider-Man 3 handles Venom, I felt like it was better than how they're handling it now with Tom Hardy. Because the way that Eddie Brock turns into Venom is because Peter Parker was being a straight up asshole to him after he got the black suit.
Well, it's a little bit more than that because like Eddie Brock tried to frame Spider-Man as like this criminal and using photos like just to like he was like he was
Yeah,
using
and
photos like to yeah like he was like Eddie Brock was not like he was just trying to take advantage of it so he could get like a higher paid or whatever, and then Peter Parker exposed his ass. He lost his job. He lost everything. So it's like his transformation to Venom was believable in that sense. But I also would say the same thing with Tom Hardy's Venom. And I still think I prefer Tom Hardy's over Spider-Man 3's. Like, in terms of, like, how Venom was portrayed, I think I prefer Spider-Man 3 over both Venom. But I think I prefer...
when we're talking about how they were portrayed...
Yeah.
Yeah, I do agree that Tom Hardy's Venom is a better portrayal, but I feel like the way that they introduce Venom is better in Spider-Man 3.
Yeah. Like, overall, like, I agree with... I agree with, like, the... how they were introduced. And again, like, I would probably say I did prefer... I think if I had to choose, I think I would still prefer Spider-Man 3 over both Venom movies, personally. But I've always liked I think the portrayal of Tom Hardy's Venom was better in my eyes. But...
Oh, yeah, like his acting and performance is a lot better and more akin to who Venom is, but at the same time...
The way they were introduced, yeah, I think I can agree with that.
The way they're introduced, Spider-Man 3 did it better. And I just feel like all of the Venom movies have just underperformed for me.
Yeah, no, they're definitely like weak films. Like they're okay, they're like meh at the very worst. And I think the only thing I came up with them was ironically the comedy.
I don't like Venom 1, and Venom 2 is just terrible.
Yeah.
It's awful. I did not like it in the slightest.
But anyway, I need to wrap this up a little bit. So like let's the future. We're gonna talk about the future, what we expect from the future a little bit. And so that'll be like more of our concluding thoughts. So overall, like I know we touched upon that we're still excited to see like what they do with Tom Holland's Spider-Man, but is there anything else like in Phase 4? Do you think like would you be excited to see this, or is it just like is overall Phase 4 still like Phase 4 or whatever they have planned for Phase 5 just dead, and it's like Tom Holland Spider-Man is like the one thing
I feel like they're going in a good direction when it comes to what they're doing. I feel like I can put my trust in like the executives, and if they do something wrong, I am gonna call it out and say, "Hey, I feel like this could have been done better." But right now, I just feel like they're going in a good direction. Yeah, Eternals was trash, and I didn't see it, but that doesn't mean that
I could confidently tell you Eternals is really bad.
But that doesn't mean that they should completely go in a different direction just because Phase 4 isn't amounting to my expectations.
Yeah, they need to work around it better, but yeah.
In all honesty, I wasn't all that excited for Phase 4 at the same time.
Yeah.
I still am not. I do enjoy that more Marvel stuff is coming, but it's not like I'm excited for it. At the same time, I am, in my own way, suffering through superhero saturation,
Oh yeah.
and I'm like, geez, how much more superhero stuff can come out before anybody really gets tired of it? Like right now, I am kind of getting tired of it because at there are so many superhero movies coming out, and
And
it's like,
more to come.
yeah, and it's like, man, I wouldn't have minded if Endgame was the ending for all of this, you know?
Well,
And
I'm kind of happy we did get No Way Home. I think No Way Home. I think the
I
two.
am happy
I
that
think Far From
No
Home
Way
and No Way
Home.
Home are definitely like the exceptions of like I don't mind a movie after Endgame, but yeah, I do agree that Endgame should have just been the last one.
Yeah, but
But I don't regret
like
having No Way Home.
I don't regret having No Way Home. I don't regret having Shang-Chi, but at the same
Well, I
time,
like Shang-Chi, but if it didn't exist, I wouldn't like. I would be fine with it, you know.
I don't know about that. Like I
Like
feel
Shang-Chi like had some really nice like choreography. Like, you know, that was my favorite thing about Shang-Chi. But if I lived in an alternate universe where Shang-Chi never existed, I would have been fine. Like it's like I like it a lot, don't get me wrong, but it's like
I would have been fine, but I don't know if I agree with that because they also have this whole cast of characters that they also have to give them a chance. You know, they have to give, Daredevil a chance. Even though the Netflix show was amazing, it got canceled, and he still has a long way to go for me personally. Like, I love the show. I love Charlie Cox as Daredevil. I want him to do more as Daredevil, and I don't know. Like, I would be fine if he wasn't in the MCU, and I would be fine if he didn't have anything to do with be okay if it was a standalone thing. That's the thing. I would be okay if Endgame was the end of all Marvel Cinematic Universe stuff, but that doesn't mean that I want Marvel stuff to stop.
yeah.
I would
No, no, what I
still
mean
like it
yeah.
if Daredevil was still coming out. I would like it if more Spider-Man stuff was coming out with Sony, and if they did No Way Home and Sony did it, because like Sony did No Way Home, you know.
Yeah, I know.
So at the same time, if they didn't do any Phase 4 stuff and they just did No Way Home after Far From Home as like a continuity to Far From Home, then I wouldn't mind it at all, you know?
Yeah.
Like, if it wasn't part of Phase 4, I'd be like, awesome. Keep it like that. Because if you take Phase 4 out of No Way Home, No Way Home doesn't really have anything to do other than the blip. It has nothing to do with like the whole Marvel
Honestly,
Cinematic Universe
that's something
completely.
I kind of wish these superhero movies would focus on, like just standalone stuff instead of like having to pull off another Endgame.
Yeah, like
I don't see Kang.
that's what I want. That's what I want DC to do.
I
Like I
feel
don't want.
well, like contrary. Like here's I have two things to say about that. Like I don't think Kang. What I was the first thing I was gonna say is that I just don't see Kang the Conqueror like beating out classing Thanos. And I agree on the DC part because even the DC movies, like I feel like the ones that are not really involved with the Zack Snyder stuff, and they're just like their standalone movies, not only do better financially, but even critically, they do better.
Yeah, like I just personally like I don't want more cinematic universe stuff to
Yeah,
come out
that I agree with.
because because not just Marvel, not just
Oh no,
Marvel or not
everything.
just
Yeah,
I don't want any more cinematic universe stuff to come out period because we're cynical. It's just going to get compared to the cinematic universe to the MCU, and then nobody's going to enjoy anything that comes out of any other cinematic
Yeah, the
universe.
Controverse and all that shit. Like nobody could the Controverse and the MonsterVerse. Like nobody gives a shit about that. I almost don't
Yeah,
really get like
and
the DCEU almost died to me after the first three entries. You know, so it's like I don't even like. And I think they should just stick with the solo films.
I feel like if more cinematic universes come out, it's just gonna be compared to the MCU, and it's not gonna have any sort of traction because everybody is just gonna say, "Oh, this is good, but the MCU did it better," you know? Because you're not devoid of that conversation.
That's definitely oversimplifying it, but yeah, I agree with that. Like it's definitely gonna constantly get compared to the MCU. Like fucking, I think I compare the MCU to like every single DCEU film that's come out in some shape or form. Like Wonder Woman to
Yeah,
first to Captain America
and
1 and Aquaman to
and
Thor. You know.
yeah, and that's what I don't like people doing, because if DC does end up doing a cinematic universe filled with like Batman and Superman and they do Justice League again, I just want it to be its own thing.
Yeah.
I don't want it to be like full of this cinematic universe because now you have to keep up with DC and Marvel. So it's like I just don't want that to happen
But yeah, but
personally.
we do. But there is
And
some
this is
pos.
and this is coming from a big DC fan. I just want more Batman movies that have nothing to do with. If I wanted a cinematic universe, I would just want it to be like Batman only, or Superman only, or Wonder Woman only, and just focus on those
But I mean,
characters. And if
basically, that you mean like
and if they
what they initially had in mind with Man of Steel. Man of Steel was supposed to be a trilogy before they did the DCEU.
and if they end up doing another Justice League movie, I just want it to be its own thing. I don't want it to just be like, oh, we have to introduce all of these characters before we do a Justice League movie. It's like, do something new because Avengers already did that and it was a
Yeah,
success, but now
it's
it just
it's
feels
time.
like everybody just wants to do the same thing.
Everybody wants to capitalize on Marvel's success. But
And the
anyway,
problem is that it's just going to get compared,
yeah,
and comparison is the thief of joy.
yep. But anyway, we need to wrap this up. So let's give our ratings to Spider-Man: No Way Home. I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. I very have like I know like the opening had like the beginning and some parts of the middle we definitely like criticized the film a little bit, but I think most of the criticisms that we did have I either I agree, but it's like it doesn't bother me personally, or it's like they're like very tiny nitpicks that just doesn't ruin the overall experience for me. And I know this is a little bit weird to say considering that this film was fairly new, but I think I could confidently say that No Way Home is my favorite MCU movie right now. Because like it's like a feel good pleasure movie. Like I can come back to it anytime and just have a good time with it, really. So
Yeah,
I give it a 9 out of 10.
I also agree with that. I also give it a 9 out of 10.
Okay.
I don't agree that this is the best Spider-Man movie.
No, no, not the best
It
Spider-Man movie. It's my favorite MCU movie. As where I place
it's
it with the Spider-Man films, I would still say Into the Spider-Verse is the best, and it's still my favorites. And I say this is still like it's like right next to Spider-Man 2 for this one for me.
I s- I still feel like Into the Spider-Verse is a better Spider-Man movie, and I
Yeah,
feel like that's a 10 out of 10. I also feel like Spider-Man 2 is a 10 out of 10. And don't get me wrong, I love everything that this movie does. I love I love Toby, I love Andrew, I love the villains, I love Tom Holland, and I even love Zendaya in this movie, but the only thing I didn't like was Ned.
yeah,
But
Ned, yeah,
that doesn't mean that I don't not like this movie.
yeah. No, this movie was still fun, and I definitely recommend it. But I had to end the
But I do have
slugcast.
to say it's not the best Spider-Man film ever made, but I do agree that this is probably top in the top 5 of best Spider-Man movies ever made.
And what about MCU? Where do you place it in the MCU films?
This is the best MCU movie that has ever come out by
Oh,
far.
okay. So you do agree with me on this one. Okay. All right. See, that one we definitely agree with. I definitely agree on both ends. I have it like tied for second, right next to Spider-Man 2, but behind Into the Spider-Verse. But in terms of the MCU, this one,
Well, no. I do
what?
have to
Is
say
Civil War?
that no. I still have to say that no, I actually changed my mind. This is not the best MCU movie that's come out. I still have to say that Infinity War is still the best MCU movie ever made for me,
Mm-hmm.
because this movie does have a lot of fan service, like No Way Home. And
Yeah.
even though I do love the fan service, especially Toby, and the themes and the music, I definitely love it.
Mm-hmm.
But I still feel like the build up, the payoff, and just everything that Infinity War did, and we've never seen it before.
Oh yeah. No, it was
I
it.
feel like Infinity War ticked every box.
No, I agree with that for sure. I'm gonna end it with this statement. I had a hard time deciding which was my favorite film between Infinity War, Winter Soldier, Iron Man 1, and Iron Man 1. So I go back and forth with those three. And I think when I put No Way Home, I initially had it like second behind Infinity War. But then like the more I thought about No Way Home, the more feel good feelings I had with it. And I had the same feeling when I had with Infinity War. Only the difference is that Infinity War blew my fucking tits off, whereas No Way Home, like, just, it made me feel peaceful, it made me feel happy. So that's why
Yeah.
I would say, because of those emotions that I feel, that I like No Way Home more. But definitely Infinity War is up there, and because of the build up and the way they handled
Oh yeah,
Thanos,
like
for sure.
definitely I like No Way Home more than Infinity War, but just as a movie, I feel like Infinity War is better.
Yeah,
And
I can.
personally, if a movie is made and you have your own biases towards the movie, it doesn't mean that it's the best movie ever made.
Yeah, I can agree with
I
that.
do- I have to say that Infinity War, with everything backing it, the entire MCU backing it, the payoff, the build up to Infinity War, and just how everything ends in a somber way, to me is just perfect. And
Yeah.
as a movie, I have to say that Infinity War is the best MCU movie ever made.
Okay. But anyway, guys, I had to end it right here. But I hope you all enjoyed this Slugcast. And Gene, I hope you had a good time returning to this epic series. As I
We
stated,
still have a lot more to do.
yeah, I still have some more plans before, so don't worry. We're not slowing down on Slugcast content. As I said before in Smash Ultimate, the series is coming back stronger than ever. And without further ado, I gotta end this right here. But thank you, sluts, for watching, and have a good fucking night.